that we have to stick to?
On live now.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I want to welcome everyone this morning to the subcommittee of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. This is the subcommittee that reviews the bond bill, right? And we look at the authorizations. It's a very critical committee. We have $2 billion worth of authorizations that already exist that we help to inquire and or move along or better understand how we could help support or sometimes maybe cut that funding if it's not necessary, and also look to see what the governor's requests are for the update to the bond bill and what our legislators would like to see with respect to the updates to the bond bill. I just want to acknowledge that we have a few meetings going on this morning that both relate to finance. So you will see representatives going in and out. Right now they are in a finance meeting, and we have 8 weeks left and a lot of work to do. So we're all doing double duty, basically, is the bottom line. Certainly it's not because a representative is not here at the committee. It just means they're on the other Zoom and they're popping in and out. So we have a great schedule today. And in a moment, I think Christina is going to pull that schedule up for the screen so that folks watching from home can see who we're meeting with today. Basically, this is round 2. We met with agencies last Friday as well. The agencies come before us in this public setting to talk about the funding related to bonding within their agency. So before we talk about the schedule, I did see Senator Moore. Oh, I did see Senator Moore come on.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
I am here.
I can't
I'm
see all
gonna
that.
be muted. I've got some noise behind me, so I'm gonna mute, but I'm here. Good morning, everyone. Looking forward. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Senator. And I know you're also in that finance meeting. And then I also see my great ranking chair there, Representative John Piscopo. Would you like to say a few words, John?
Good morning, Madam Chair and everyone. Thank you very much for having us, and I'm looking forward to the meeting.
Great. Thank you, Representative. And I don't see Senator Huang on, who is the ranking Senate member, unless I'm missing his square here. So if he comes on later and joins us, we'll certainly provide the opportunity for him to say a few comments as well. So Christina, do you want to just pull up that schedule really quick so everybody who may be watching from home, there may be a particular agency you want to tune into. So 10:30, 11:30 is Department of Administrative Services. We then have Department of Economic, Department of Economic and Community Development, which we call DECD. We have the Department of Housing today, Office of Policy Management, and then, so we're going to try to stick to our schedule the best that we can. And again, our bonding committee provides mostly capital support. That's what the bonding is supposed to be used for all the agencies across the state. So from housing to many of the DEEP programs, DECD, which is the economic development, a lot of the projects that we have been supporting across the state to really support our cities in their critical need, public safety, nonprofit, you name the agency, and we hear from them about their needs and what capital support they need. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our acting commissioner, Michelle Gilman, and give you the floor. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Representative Boer. It's my pleasure to be here this morning. And Senator Moore, good to see you as well, Representative Piscopo, and look forward to seeing Senator Huang as well, knowing that he has multiple commitments as well as you all do this morning. And members of the committee, look forward to the conversation again today. Thank you for having us. And I just want to again, as acting commissioner, I want to acknowledge that we've really enjoyed the partnership for many years with this committee, as we have many bonding priorities and shared commitments on numerous projects and activities affecting not only our state, but also our municipalities and communities. So really, again, appreciate the dialogue and look forward to your questions today. I will just briefly go through our testimony, which I believe you all have, as well as several documents that we've submitted as backup. But for the record, I do want to go through our requests. And then I'm also joined by several subject matter experts from the DAS team with respect to your questions as well. So again, good morning. As Senator Moore, Representative Boer, Senator Wong, Representative Piscopo, and distinguished members of the General Bonding Subcommittee, my name is Michelle Gilman, and I am the Acting Commissioner of the Department of Administrative Services. DAS utilizes bond funds in connection with a number of different programs, including property and facilities management, the State Hazardous Materials Remediation Program, construction services, and the Bureau of Information Technology Solutions, which is now called BITS. It used to be called BEST. The Office of School Construction Grants and Review utilizes bond funds for the reimbursement of construction of school buildings under the School Construction Grant Program. As I indicated, we've also attached and below for our testimony several documents that provide detailed information on all of these programs. And again, look forward to going through that detail today. Included, we have provided detailed information on all of the programs for which DAS has unallocated bonds. We've labeled that the unallocated bond report. We've also provided the 5-year capital improvement plan, which is a planning document that identifies projects, capital improvements needed in the next 5 years at various buildings under DAS control. The DAS Facilities Management Pipeline Report is a detailed report on large and small construction projects in various stages of design and construction, including recently completed project activity. And then lastly, our DAS Facilities Management Annual Capital Expenditure Program request for 2023, for fiscal year 23 to 24, provides a review of our capital request to the State Bond Commission for those particular years. So with that, I'm happy to dig into the specifics of the report as you'd like. Happy to answer any questions for you.
Sorry, I was on mute. I do have questions, but I see that Representative Piscopo has his hand raised, so I'm going to defer to him.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd be willing to let you go. You usually ask the questions I'm thinking of anyway.
Well, I was going to run through unallocated balances, but which I'm sure. So why don't you go, and then whatever you miss, I'll do.
Okay, I'll hit a couple of the big ones that kind of stood out, Commissioner. And welcome. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to see you.
And I appreciate your testimony. Just two unallocated expenses came out to me that stuff. The Alliance districts, I see an unallocated balance of about 36 million. Is there a demand for that? Do you have a line of people actually requesting that money, or have you submitted, or have you submitted that to the governor with request for the next commission agenda?
So by and large, it's my understanding that this fund is more along the lines of discretionary funding that we utilize in collaboration with the legislature for specific projects. But I am going to ask Tim O'Brien from our school construction team to provide additional detail around the use of this fund. Tim?
Yeah, that's when there's a decision made, which was last made in 2020, that there be an allocation that's distributed to the Alliance districts. The Alliance district list is prepared by SDE, and the last go around there was a allocation based upon as I recall, the size of the municipalities, and from there it's just administrative in Oscar to receive the documentation back from the municipalities that they've spent the money compliant with the program.
Thank you. It was a 220 request, did you say?
There was a state bond commission allocation in 2020. And that was the last time it was used. And it was years before that it was used. But it's decisions that are made above the school construction office level.
I understand, and that's that's lying in limbo. Is that 35 million? Is that 36 million under request presently from the 2020 commission agenda?
That's that. I don't know if whether the administration is requesting continuing that funding. That's something I would need to defer to somebody else.
Thank you, Tim. And the other one that jumps out at me is the grants and aid to priority school districts for projects, 55 million. Do you see that? Is that
yes
along the same lines as your last answer?
Well, we actually had to look into what that was about. Our understanding was that there was when that authorization was given, that there was an idea of that about how it might be utilized for. Apparently, it's for priority districts, but the word that we got was that the intent behind it was largely covered by the existing school construction grant program. Beyond that, I don't think we know what the intention is behind that authorization.
Thank you for that answer, Tim, and thank you again, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Piscopo. I don't see any other hands at the moment, so I'm just going to run through some of my questions. And you're right, Representative Piscopo, we were on the same track. It's about the unallocated balances, and it is about the alliance districts and the priority schools. So the 36 million in the alliance districts has been authorized, but it hasn't been allocated. Do the schools, and I know as we discussed this morning, some of you are just becoming familiar with some of these programs, but need to know these programs as DAS is oversight. Do the schools, do the alliance districts know that this funding is available? It's $36 million for general improvements, right?
Kim, can you speak to any of the outreach that we've been able to do, or what has been previously done on this?
Well, because the last that, and I know I was only in the office, in school construction office during the last time that there was an allocation, but it is, if there is a decision, an upper level management decision made to make an allocation, then there is a notification that's put out to the districts that it's coming, and what is. I seem to remember that they need to request it, but I would need to verify exactly the process that's used. But because it is a discretionary decision as to whether or not to issue the funds, and in the last allocation, it was to all of the bond commission actually named the amount for each district. So it's unlike the regular school construction grant program, in which school districts develop their own application and then submit it, and then it's evaluated. This was a decision that went the other way, where it came from the upper levels, and that each town was assigned a specific allocation.
Yeah, thank you for that. I saw that in the report, that there was a formula used for the alliance districts to determine how much they would be receiving. I guess we would ask that this is if you can take this back, because it is 36 million, it is sitting there unallocated. So it's like, are we using it or not? Right. Mm-hmm. So we need to know what the plan is for this funding, and if we could allocate it, and if there is a need to allocate, which I'm going to guess there's a need to allocate, that we determine how we get that funding out to our Board of Education, our municipalities. And then on the priority school districts, the $55 million, it's for projects that expenditures that are not eligible under school construction. So I know in your finance presentation, you talked about different needs at the schools that don't fall under school construction, like an athletic building, or maybe a theater or a track, things that aren't, specific school construction. Is that what this funding is for? And you had recommended a legislative change that allows for some of that process to change. So can you just speak to the $55 million for projects that are not eligible under school construction, if that makes sense?
Tim, may I defer to you?
Information that we had on that allocation was pretty much what I said, which is that it wasn't the intentionality behind it wasn't really didn't really filter down to our level, and so there's like I said, it seems from what we've done from our research on that particular authorization that the intent was largely covered by the existing school construction grant program. Beyond that, we don't really have a lot of information.
Okay, so that's another program that I think, right? So there has to be documentation somewhere, right? And you said you all had done research to determine what the intent was. So I think it's important for us that now that you are responsible for these line items, that you let us know what your intent is for these line items so that we can make a determination if we still need them, right? Personally, I'm not in favor of cutting school construction, but if we have all these different buckets, we want to make sure we're just like organized what is paying for what, right?
Yes, we completely agree with you, Representative, and obviously Representative Piscopo as well. You've raised this as well, and I'm sure it's a concern of the full committee. So with Oscar moving back to GAS, this is a priority for us to look at. Certainly, we would expect that there are needs for utilization of this fund and these funds by, the respective school districts, both Alliance and the priority schools. So we look forward to working with you to address both moving forward, how we're communicating with those respective districts, and then also, reporting back on, the needs so that we can have a collaborative approach for these funds. So we look forward to continuing that and really working with you on those requests moving forward.
Okay, great. So that collaboration, we're going to have a public hearing on the bond bill, hopefully next week. And then we as a committee need to make decisions about what adjustments we would make to the bond bill. So I think we're going to need that information relatively soon.
Certainly.
Before we approve, additional funding or to reinstate this funding. And then on school construction for the 636, can you just go through what schools this applies to? Because there's always questions on VOTEC versus regional school. Like, what will the 636,000? We understand how the priority list works in the priority committee, but what schools are eligible for school construction funding?
Tim, may I ask you to detail that answer?
Well, the program is a general program, so it applies to all the public school districts. It applies to the regional school districts and the RESCs as well, the regional education service centers. And there's also eligibility for the endowed districts, although that's infrequent, endowed schools. And that is the reimbursement program. And so the participation of the state in that is to reimburse for expenditures that are eligible under the program. And there's a whole litany of requirements that they have to do from plan review to be able to have the expenditures themselves evaluated for eligibility. And of course, then it is run through the reimbursement rate for all those districts. Then there's also the part that deals with the vocational technical schools, and also there is so far 2 CREC schools that are similar in terms of the project delivery to the VOTEC schools. The VOTEC schools are built under construction services auspices, and the state holds those contracts. There is in the past few years, there's been a separation in the accounting between those. For example, in probably the best year when we can start is fiscal year 2021. There was $113.8 million spent in the VOTEC CREC category and $263.9 million in the progress payment, which is the reimbursement program to districts. And so the VOTEC schools and the CREC schools, that's following the directive of the state as to what the projects are. And of course, the vast majority of the funding under the progress payments also are following the directive of the legislature in the form of the priority list.
Okay. How about magnet schools?
Magnet schools are one of the project types within the progress payment part of the school construction grant program.
And is there any particular restrictions around magnet schools? You know, we've heard in the past as a committee when we met with OPM, some challenges with funding the magnet schools. Is there any restriction around that? Is there any reason we wouldn't be funding the magnet schools?
The magnet schools are a specific program, and if my understanding of the way the program works is that they are determined by SDE. But we can clarify that if we need to. But our participation is that they are a type of school that is eligible they would be under magnet schools. Those would be priority list programs. So you would see that as a priority list grant.
Okay, great. So they go through the same priority list process. They go to the priority committee.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then in the finance meeting, you had indicated that the priority committee meeting and agenda is online, but I couldn't find it. And I know you are striving to be more transparent about how these decisions are made. Is the priority committee's actions, are they online so that the public can see? How does that process work? The decision-making process for what schools get funded, basically.
Tim, are you able to speak to that? I thought all of our materials were online. We can verify that.
I'm sorry. Did you want me to?
Yes, please.
So yeah, there's an administrative process for reviewing priority list applications, and then they are submitted by the department through the statutory provisions to the administration, and then to the statutory priority list committee, which is a bipartisan committee that exists in statutes, and it's a legislative committee, and it's under your control. So that gets reported, and then the final priority list then is reported by that committee to the legislature, to the full legislature.
Okay, all right, great. It could be me that I couldn't, navigate the system. So if somebody can help me find all that information online, so that we know that it's public information, that would be great. And if it's not online, then we will work together to get it online so that the public has confidence that they can see that information. And then sticking with school construction, just want to ask about the audits again. And I know you gave a great presentation in the finance committee on Monday, or I don't know, days seem to blend, whatever day that was this week. And we had asked about the lag time for these audits. So the audit does not begin until the school construction project is completed. That's correct, right?
I believe that's correct. I will confirm that with our audit team. You're talking about the internal audits by the school construction unit?
Yes, the specific school construction project audit. So you have your internal auditors that audit the actual project, right? You have your external auditors that are looking to look at the overall policies and procedures and the separation of duties and the safeguards we have in place. And now you're bringing in another external auditor that's going to kind of audit the audit, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. So
it is my understanding that we start that audit process once all of the documentation is complete, the file is complete, but I will reconfirm that is indeed the process, and that there's no sort of pre-start to that audit process on the internal side.
Yeah, so because we authorized this funding as a committee, and right, we have $636 million, I think it's our responsibility to do our due diligence to make sure that those audits are happening and beginning and ending timely, because for two reasons. One, because we want to make sure that the project, right, was in compliance with all the policies and procedures. But number two, and I've mentioned this before, districts do not get reimbursed until that audit is complete. So if you have a $100 million school that's being built and the holdback is 11%, so the state holds back 11% of that reimbursement. And the idea around that was to make sure that a district complies with the audit process, right? So you don't get all your money back until we know that you followed the audit. So the state holds back 11%. But if that $100 million school ends and the audit doesn't begin for another year, and then it doesn't get completed for 6 months, I don't know how long they're taking. In essence, that district doesn't get $11 million of their reimbursements for a year and a half. And for certainly our cities that are distressed, that's a lot of money. So I would ask that if you can provide to us a listing of projects that have been completed in the last, let's say, 5 years, just to get a sense of how we're doing with the audits. Projects that have been completed in the last 5 years, when did those audits start and when did those audits end? And the reason I'm asking is because we need to catch up on these audits if in fact it is true that they are so far behind, because we want to start fresh and we want to help you do that. And we want to make sure these projects are audited, and we want to make sure these municipalities are getting their holdbacks timely.
We can certainly look to provide you that list. And I would also mention that if there are school districts that are experiencing delays in getting their reimbursements, we're happy to work with you, work with them to flag any issues or concerns with those, potential delays. Oftentimes that municipal cost share that's used for, a project, oftentimes voted on by referendum or voted on by, the respective body, that is utilized for the majority of those initial costs, while then the state reimbursement process then kicks in, at the end for those remaining costs. But we do realize the impact to the communities in terms of that delay, as we do our due diligence around the audit process, and then also for that holdback. So we'll provide some additional information to you around that time frame. And then again, with the Oscar program and now the audit, division now in separate functions within DAS, we are looking at all of the processes and procedures around that, including where we can make that more efficient for our communities and quite honestly for our staff as well.
Great, thank you. And then just one other question on the audits. I know the audits don't begin until the construction project ends. Is there a possibility, or are you looking at some sort of touch point during the project? Because a project can take a year, right? Can take longer than a year. And is there any benchmarks or any criteria or threshold where an audit can take a preliminary look? Because by the time the project is over, right, the horse is out of the gate or out of the barn. So, to be able to guide a municipality that might be going down the wrong path, unknowingly maybe, to kind of stop them in their tracks and say, this is, we see some flags here before they get to the end of the project. Is there any thought about maybe doing that?
I can take that back to our audit team to see if that is possible. I know that we do work with the communities, throughout the course of the project, answering questions, making sure that, eligible costs are indeed, reimbursable, so there is that dialogue. But, under the scope of this is largely a municipally driven project. But let me look into the details with our business office, which is now coordinating that audit function, as you know, to see, where we can have a more robust connection with the communities around, a pre-audit system. Obviously, they're under a great amount of pressure, not only to look back at the past number of years, but also moving forward. But I'm really confident with our business office and the ability that they have to move this forward and work to expedite it appropriately. So let me take all of those concerns back and see how we can make this process more efficient.
Great, I appreciate it. And there's so many questions around the audit process because we really want to be able to, as you say, rely on, they are our safeguard, and you know, they're looking to make sure there's, you know, everything is in place, separation and segregation of duties, and proper policies and procedures in place. Okay, so I see Dave, Representative Yacarino has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner and Michelle and Tim for being here. I have a couple of questions or maybe suggestions. When you say it's a $100 million project for school construction, and in each stage of the project, does DAS, I think, would save time and be more efficient, look at when the foundation period, the mechanicals period, and audit each period of the construction project? Because if, say, it was 20 million for this, but all of a sudden the district comes in and they need more money, and I know they're already allocated the money, but I think it's more efficient for DAS to work with, say, Gilbane, whoever the contractors are, to see where the efficiencies are and what the dollars are and where the money's being spent. And I think you would avoid a lot of maybe overage, or I think it'd be better for auditing. I don't know if you've ever looked at that. I know you're new, Commissioner, Deputy, well, Commissioner rather. Do you have any comments on that?
So I can take a look at, I hear your concern, and thank you for that. So with the limited staff that this, that this department has, and then obviously working with, current projects that are in various states of development and design, and then also recognizing that by and large, these are municipally driven projects. I'd want to take a look at, your recommendations. Again, we want to have a partnership with our communities, with our schools. But by and large, what is the distinction between the municipalities and having those processes in place, the building inspectors as well, in their role with that as well. But very much hear your concerns. So I'm happy to look at that and see if there are any enhancements we can make to the process.
The reason I say that is because it keeps the contractor and municipality, I think, on the same page. It's still, at the end of the day, it's taxpayer dollars. The state's funding a good chunk of this, and taxpayers are paying for that. And I just think it's just, I don't think it's cumbersome. I think it actually is more continuity. It maybe in the beginning to implement it, but it's more continuity. You have the foundation, the site work, then the mechanicals go next, and so on. I think that at least we should look at it, I would hope, for more efficiency. And then off that, with construction prices going up so rapidly, or material, is there any, how's it working? Because you could bid a project today and it's 20% more tomorrow or in 2 months.
No, it's an excellent comment. And it's my understanding that this is where the contingencies are built in as schools develop their budgets. And that's part of what they need to do, especially in this environment with costs escalating. Tim, you may be able to provide additional comment on how those contingencies work. But we're certainly working very closely with those school districts around those budgets to make sure that they're realistic given the market conditions. And again, working in partnership with them on all of those technical questions. But Tim, please interject where you can.
Right, and part of the process involves from the grant application a detailed cost estimate using a modified version of Uniformat. And then there are at different steps, especially with the larger projects, they'll do it at design development, and then again at construction documents, so that just before our plan reviewers review it to authorize it to go out to bid, then they'll have a fairly detailed estimate as to what the project will cost. But I know that I have heard our plan reviewers talk about many of the issues that you're bringing up about cost escalation, and so the estimators and the deputy commissioner I know has emphasized making sure that the estimates are done using professional cost estimators, so that the integrity of the actual estimates that we receive is stronger, and so there's less variability built in.
I appreciate that. And at the end of the day, it's having an efficient, safe project, but also protecting the taxpayer dollars. And you don't want somebody, a bad actor, escalating the price even higher than normal. And so I know it's a tough job, but I think it's something we should look at. And one last question, Madam Chair. So I missed part of the beginning, 55 million unallocated, that unallocated for certain projects, Commissioner? Or was it out, like I think that's excess dollars. I missed the beginning, so I just counted 55 million.
Certainly. So this is relative to the priority school district projects. And so we're going.
55 million, is that to be spread about first come, first serve, or the priority, the most dire need job projects? It's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money. You have a lot of schools, a lot of districts.
Yeah, so we have not utilized those funds in several years. So, we would, so I'd be cautious about discussing like how those funds have been allocated, because we really have not done that in some time. But our commitment to you is that we are going to take a look at this quickly, along with the Alliance District Fund, and looking at and knowing that you have some deadlines for next week. What is the best approach to utilize those funds, and also to communicate with you and also with the school districts that would utilize these funds, to better communicate their use, so that we can, make best use of those balances.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Representative.
Thank you, Representative. And Representative Piscopo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question for the Commissioner. Commissioner, we refreshed my memory. We had a fire school in the Southern Valley. I can't remember the town. Orange, maybe, or one of our fire schools that were pending an allocation. Can you catch me up on the fire school down there, Southern Valley?
Certainly. So the fire school program, I believe that at current moment, there are 2 fire schools that are in consideration for potential development or reconstruction. This is a legislative decision at this point to determine, the next steps on which program. It's my understanding we don't have enough funds to proceed with both, whether that's the Valley program in Beacon Falls or the Waterbury program for Cheshire. So we stand ready on your direction, to proceed. But again, it's my understanding we do not have the funds to proceed on both based on the current balances.
Okay, and quick question. It jogged my memory when our chair was asking you questions about different grants for the different types of schools, magnets and tech schools. It seemed that is charter schools at all eligible for any kind of a grant from this money? Do you know?
Tim, can I defer to you on that?
There have been, I've seen in the records, there's some charter schools that have been permitted to participate in the school construction grant program in the past. But as a general rule, I believe the funding, such as it is, that supports capital expenditures has run through SDE. We need to check that to verify, but charter schools are not a part of the standard school construction grant program right now. We do. There are the 3 endowed academies, which are not. They're private, but they also serve a quasi-public role, as I understand correctly. Those schools are eligible in the program, and we publish reimbursement rates for them. But the charter schools per se, my understanding is that they are not in the standard program.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Piscopo. Just a couple of other questions. There's $10 million in the asbestos removal. Who has ultimate responsibility for the asbestos removal program? And is that specifically for schools, or is that asbestos removal for state buildings? What is that $10 million for?
So this particular program with the 10 million is primarily for state buildings. It is for state buildings and you know, those facilities. So this is separate from anything that that towns and cities or school districts would utilize.
Okay, so when a school does need to have asbestos removal, this is probably a Tim question, does that come out of the 600 million in school construction that we have?
I believe that's an eligible expenditure under the grant. It's a reimbursement based upon what the school district does.
So who has the ultimate responsibility? Is it DAS as oversight of school construction, or is it Department of Education when it comes to asbestos removal in schools?
In terms of their local programs, there's they would there's the state is involved on a project basis for the VOTEC schools as well, but those are all part of the project expenditures.
And Tim, just to clarify, local school districts would be responsible for their own remediation activity. Is that correct?
Yeah, the local school districts decide those level of details. At the local level, we're a reimbursement program.
And then we do provide, you know, contract options under the master contract, which of course, there's been, you know, more information on that overall in the news, but, and under our review. And then in terms of funding, Tim, can you clarify with those issues and funding, would that come out of a particular pot of funding for schools that have asbestos removal? Would that be considered part of their school construction program? And there may be a distinction between an emergency asbestos removal as well.
Those are, as far as I know, those are just considered part of just another expenditure type as part of those projects.
Okay. Okay. I just want to go back to the fire training schools, because you had indicated there's two. There's actually three. There is the Valley, Wolcott, and I believe it's Middletown. Actually, I saw Representative Williams on here before. But there's three, and we put sufficient funding in the bond bill last year specifically to be able to cover all three if all three were needed. In the meantime, we met with the Firefighters Association and we asked them to rank, because I'm not in a position, maybe somebody else on here is, but I'm not in a position to rank which one is, you know, the priority list. And they ranked the priority list. So there is a priority list and there is funding available. I think, so we already have that information. We've already furnished that information. We could refurnish that information to you. But really it's, you know, the ball's in your court right now to determine what you want to allocate and, you know, what you can. But the legislative body has asked that the fire training school go forward based on their list. And I believe their priority was the Valley. Okay.
So I appreciate that clarification on Middletown. My apologies. Can I have Sarah join the call? I know she's on, but I'd love for her to speak to this issue, given her subject matter expertise on this.
Good morning. I would like to request that priority list to be refurnished to DAS. I'm not aware of the current staff that's assigned to this program having that availability. So yes, I would request that.
Okay, great. They did a great analysis. You know, they did an overlay map of the population of the state, where the gaps are, volunteer firefighters versus paid firefighters. And I think we have upwards of maybe 24,000 volunteer, maybe 7,000 paid. I don't know if I have my numbers exactly right, but they want to make sure that, you know, the firefighters have the professional and modern tools that they need to train. So I'm happy to reconnect you with those folks and let them explain what their needs are, because they could do it so more eloquently than I can.
So yes, that's understood. And DAS will proceed with moving the next school forward, provided that we have direction on which one is to move forward if there's more than one. My understanding, just based upon the previous cost submissions that were received several years ago, is that there would only be sufficient funding to cover the construction of one more school. I don't know the details of Middletown, so I would have to get back to everyone as far as that goes.
Okay, great. We did get a cost for each of them, and that is why last year we specifically added, I believe it was $5 million to the bond bill last year to make sure that there was sufficient funds to cover the needs. Now, the prices could have changed over the past year. I'm sure they have. I know they had contracts that they were trying to work through so that they can obligate the cost that they were given. I don't know where that stands, but I do know that there is still a need, and I do know that the firefighters still want these training schools. So we could take that offline. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add to that.
And I would just interject as well, Representative, that we recognize the need for these schools, and we'll take this back, you know, to both look at the priority list, the legislative actions last year, and then match up the costs for, you know, the 3 proposed schools to work with you on that, given the cost. But we do want to reconcile all of that, because again, based on what the team has continued to assert is that this really is funding only for one. But I do want to look at the information you've identified today, and we can circle back with you by early next week around you know, any discrepancies there, so we can address them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
There's $24 million there. And I think Wolcott was enough. I don't think they're all full brand new schools. I think some of that is upgrading. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions for DAS? Okay, so while I'm looking for hands, I just want to recap. So your team is going to take back the Alliance District's unallocated balance and just do an analysis, a new analysis of that need and what the plan is for that funding. You're going to take back the priority school funding category and do an analysis of that as well. You're going to be able to provide to us an idea, well, a report of where audits stand and how far behind they are. How many schools do we have that need to be audited? You're going to relook at the fire training, and I think I got it. Unless I, was there anything, any other takeaways that our team asked for that I'm missing? Trying to take notes and, okay, great.
Excellent. We will get you all of that information, and really appreciate the conversation and the opportunity to speak before you today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and best of luck. And if there's something that you need from us to help you to be successful, please let us know.
Will do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, we're a little ahead of schedule, right, Christina?
Yes, I haven't seen anyone from DECD come in yet.
Okay, so because we have a specific schedule and they're not coming on till 11:30, do you want to, whenever we have time, just put something up like a share screen, just saying we'll return in 10 minutes or we will be back at 11:30 or something like that?
Yep, I could do that right now.
Unless the committee, Senator Moore, I mean, we can stay on until the next agency. That's up to you.
I'm staying on. I can't walk away anyway, so I'm here.
Okay.
I'll stay on.
Okay.
I'm in environment public hearing right now, so I'll duck out for just a few minutes to listen to that for a while.
Okay, and if we see Department DECD coming on a little earlier, then we'll bring them on. But I think, you know, publicly we said they're coming out at 11:30, so we don't want to go too early because people may be tuning in at 11:30.
I understand.
Okay.
And we're remaining live on YouTube, correct?
We are. That's why I was going to say we should put something up on the
We
screen.
still should put something up, but I will be here.
Okay. So Christina, you want to just throw something up on the screen? We'll be back at 11:30.
Yep, I'll do that right now.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm going to call you, Dorinda,
Okay. What are you going to call me?
right now.
Hi, everyone. I think we're ready to come back. We have Department of Economic and Community Development scheduled for 11:30. We want to stay on track. Thank you for DECD for being patient. I'm just, hang on one second, just taking a look at who we have here. I'm going to actually let Commissioner Lehman introduce the team. But we welcome you today to the committee for the bonding subcommittee of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, where we're meeting with the various agencies across the state departments to talk about what the bonding needs are and the status of the existing bonding needs that we have already authorized. So we welcome you. And David, I know I saw you. There you are. Yes. I'm just going to turn it over to you, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, Rep. Orr, thanks, and rest of the bonding subcommittee. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'll just make a couple minutes of brief remarks, and in doing so, I'll introduce the team and some of the programs that you may have questioned. So with me here today, in no specific order, we have Deputy Commissioner Alexandra Dom, and two programs worth highlighting that Alexandra is really pointing on. One is brownfields, which you'll see again, and I guess maybe at the outset I should say, there were no proposed adjustments from the governor's perspective for DECD's bonding and the programs that we oversee for FY23. But Alexandra's here today. Brownfields is a program that she oversees. This is a program we have very high conviction on. We think $25 million a year is the right pace, and she can talk about anything, take any questions that the committee has.
Hey, David, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Just try to figure out. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm not sure why. I'm at the Fairfield West area, so there should be excellent service, but I'll be even briefer then. So Alexandra Dom's here. She oversees the Brownfields program that we do, as well as she's taken the lead on the Community Investment Fund. And CIF, as this group knows, will be ready to go on July 1st, 2022, with $175 million of bonding per year. DCD will serve as administrator for that. In addition, can you still hear me okay, Miranda?
Yep.
In addition, with me today is Ginny Wright. Ginny was hired last year as the interim executive director for the Social Equity Council. So adult use cannabis is a big focus right now, and Ginny is rolling that out, and she is asking for funding some of the $50 million that was allocated last year with the passing of adult use cannabis. We also have Kelly Valeries and Niall from her team that are here to talk about Career Connect and all the good work that's going on with workforce development and the funding needs that are there. Also with me is Liz Shapiro, who heads our arts and culture office, and she can talk about Good to Great and the important program to enhance cultural and historic sites in the state of Connecticut. Two other programs I'll mention where I'm happy to take any questions is the Manufacturing Assistance Act. In particular, that is money we're using for the state's economic action plan, the Connecticut Communities Challenge program that we're running, as well as the Innovation Corridor program. In addition to, we're using that for our job creation benefits to companies that are growing jobs in the state of Connecticut. And then lastly, we have Small Business Express, which is another program we're working on rolling out, what we call small business support. It's $125 million over the next 3 years to focus on small businesses with a particular focus on minority businesses, businesses in distressed municipalities, women-owned businesses, and other areas that we think are underbanked. And then lastly, the Manufacturing Innovation Fund is another area where there's been bonding focus. 10 million last year, another 10 million this year. Paul Lavoie, who is our new Chief Manufacturing Officer, is heading up that work with the MIF board, and we think that's really critical for the state's manufacturing industry. So I'll stop with that. Happy to take all your questions, and I think we've got the right group here to address them. Thank you, Dorinda.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. And I should have started off by saying thank you to you and your team for all the great work you're doing across Connecticut. We know it's a lot of it is transformational. So thank you. And thank you for being here today. So I don't see any questions yet. So I am going to turn right over to, can you, I forgot who you said was here on the team. Oh, you know what? Let me go to Representative Piscopo. I do see hands. There was a delay. And then I'll ask my questions. So Representative Piscopo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Commissioner. Thank you for your testimony.
Great to be here.
I know I asked a lot of questions last year on the community investment initiative. It seems you're actually it's a good thing. It seems you're a little bit ahead of schedule. In your first meeting, have you formed any kind of a priority list of this $175 million that's allocated to you?
So thank you, Representative, for the question. I should have mentioned one person here before I answer. Deputy Commissioner Paul Robertson is also at the meeting team. So Paul just joined us about a month ago and he's new to DECD. So Representative Piscopo, the short answer to your question is no, there's not a priority list right now. Where the focus has been, we're actually very close to hiring an administrator for the CIF fund. So we think there's initially one, but more likely 2 or 3 staff that are going to be necessary given the process that the CIF board is going to take. And our goal is to have the administrator and a process in place that's approved by the CIF board to begin accepting applications on July 1st, 2020. How this board was set up, ultimately the Speaker Ritter and President Looney are going to co-chair this entity, and ultimately we'll work closely with them as administrator, taking their direction on getting the word out and then how we're going to prioritize and ultimately deliberate on the applications CIF receives.
Thank you. That gives me a better understanding. I was going to ask who was chairing this board, and so I appreciate that. And as I go through a little more of your testimony, I'll chime in. But I just wanted to leave you with a thank you very much. Your staff there has been very, very receptive. I mean, anytime one of us calls, you always get back to us and do your best to address whatever economic development issue we have in our district. So I wanted to thank you for your responsiveness as an agency.
We appreciate the kind words, Representative. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Piscopo. And I actually myself go through Kyle Abercrombie for every single request because he is the triage because it's a great big department and I don't know who to go to. So all roads start with Kyle. So thank you for that. And I see Representative Farrar has her hand up.
Thanks, Chairwoman. Thanks to everyone for being here. Even in this ongoing Zoom format, we appreciate it. We appreciate you taking the time no matter where you are, Commissioner. A couple questions, just to get a little more detail on a few items. One around the Connecticut Manufacturing Innovation Fund. Can you speak a little bit more about how you are intending kind of using those dollars? I heard a little bit around a connection potentially to some other programs. So I'm trying to figure out exactly how you intend to use those.
Yeah, so it's a great question, Representative. You know, historically, we put out an annual report every year for the MIF, which I think we'll talk through, you know, the specific programs in terms of funding and the leverage, the third-party dollars in particular. The 2 programs looking backwards that we've had, where most of that funding's gone, one has been called the voucher program, where it's the state provides matching funds for small manufacturers to purchase equipment like CNC machines and other equipment that's necessary to run their operations. And then the second one is the incumbent worker training program. So an apprenticeship program where the MIF can provide funding for apprentices again, the focus here is really small manufacturers. The median manufacturer in the state has a payroll of around 20 FTEs. So the focus really here is on small manufacturers, helping them and assisting them. Looking forward now, I expect the voucher program and the apprenticeship program to be significant, but there's other initiatives around digital transformation, for example, Industry 4.0, where there's going to be, again, funding for smaller manufacturers to make sure that they're on the cutting edge of technology. But the main goal there is to support and grow jobs and provide matching funds to small manufacturers to continue to adapt to the industry needs. So
for this upcoming year, how many dollars do you anticipate being available for those offerings to our small manufacturers? 10 million. Okay.
And we anticipate using, it was 10 million last year. We asked for it right away and we anticipate using it, and then 10 million for FY23 as well.
Okay, that's great to hear. There's many small manufacturers in my district who are anxious for these funds and have indicated very clearly the additional business they could bring into our state with these funds. So that's very helpful. On a second point, and around kind of shifting from manufacturing, and thank you, Kelly, for being here. I'm wondering if you can give an update to everyone on Career Connect specifically. I know you all have been taking applications for grantees. but can you kind of walk us through kind of the phase of the use of funding that has been allocated to Career Connect as it relates to bonding, how that'll be dispersed to the grantees versus how it'll be used for particular individuals who are part of Career Connect?
Sure. So Career Connect is really funded through two funding sources: the federal ARPA dollars, which is the 70 million. Currently, we're reviewing the applications that we did a call for proposals. We received 57 applications for a total of $250 million. So the demand for these types of programs is really great across the state, and they're very comprehensive programs. So right now we're in the process of reviewing all of those and scoring them against our criteria, and then being able to award those grantees and launch those programs. We're expecting a launch sometime the beginning of May, with a press release of our one front door entry for all job seekers looking for training programs to come through a centralized portal. And then they'll go through the process. Now, the federal ARPA dollars have a very prescribed use. And so what we're doing with the state bond dollars is supporting the Career Connect program for other innovative things that we're not able to use the federal dollars for, such as an alternate transportation fund. So we find that a lot of the people that we're serving, right, we're really reaching into underserved populations and people who have been historically, unemployed, long-term unemployed, who have barriers to getting back into the workforce. So, transportation is one of those major barriers, and being able to set up a fund in which we can have creatively be able to provide opportunities for transportation for people when they complete the training program into employment is one example. Another example is incumbent worker training. So the MIF fund has been extremely successful in incumbent worker training, but that fund is only allowable uses for the manufacturing sector. So we would like to mimic that type of a program for the other job sectors that we're working with, and then be able to further upskill people who go through the Career Connect programs, get those entry-level certifications, get into entry-level work, can be able to utilize some incumbent worker training to upskill them and get them into a higher wage range. So just a couple examples of how the funding from the bond dollars will be used to support the larger program we're doing with the federal dollars.
So just to clarify, what amount is the federal dollar commitment?
The federal dollar commitment is 70 million.
Yeah.
62 million of that is going directly to job training programs. There's funding going towards supporting administrative costs, but a comprehensive marketing program to be able to drive participants into those programs. 2 million of those funds were authorized to be allocated to the Department of Labor for summer programs for youth. So there's some, allocations moving around there. And then the total authorization of the bond funding in last session was 40 million, 20 for each year.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you for that update, Kelly. I really appreciate it. And I'll certainly follow up and look forward to the extent of the grantees. I think on the grantee question, you noted that the applications have shown $250 million. Do you anticipate extending all of that $250 million?
We only have 62 million to extend.
Okay. So that gets to the crux of, will you be using other funds that you have, or you're only sticking to the 62?
We are looking to braid funding through like the WIOA dollars to be able to utilize this. There's other state agencies like DSS who has funding for disabilities, and they're allocated that $1 million over to us. We're working on a reentry program in which DECD has allocated a match to the NAACP for job training programs. So we're really trying to take a broad approach and braid in other funding sources so we can get more people going through these programs.
Okay.
Representative, one just thing I would jump in on quickly too is we did make a request in the governor's midterm adjustments for an additional $15 million to go to support the kind of core Career Connect programming. That is a drop in the bucket given the delta that we're seeing in terms of the demand. But we think that'll really help promote some targeted investments in areas such as childcare workers, teachers, areas where we didn't see a lot of proposals come in on the first tranche of funding. So that is currently being proposed right now in the midterm adjustments.
Thank you for clarifying that now. And then Chairman, I just have one other question about the culture grants. If someone would be willing to kind of update us. I know, we've kind of gone through this moment of so many of our cultural institutions just starting to kind of come out and offer more regular programming, revenue generating programming, and many of them are still suffering in regards to their bottom line. So can you kind of share a little bit around the Culture Grants program and what your plans are there and how we can work with you on that?
Sure. Liz Shapiro, who heads up arts and culture, is here. So Liz, please fire away.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thanks, Representative Farrar. So the Good to Great program was offered for the first time in 2016 and then again in 2018. And we were planning to run it again in 2020. And as you all know, the applicants, that program was created to allow small cultural organizations to actually have access to bond funds, which are not without their complications to administer. So there's a lot of hand-holding necessary. 2020 came, the pandemic came, nobody could think about even beginning any of these projects. So right now, during this sort of downtime that we've had, we have reached out to continue our partnership with Connecticut Humanities, where they have committed to begin to work with applicants to help them get ready and do the hand-holding part of this process, while DECD staff can do the administrative part of the process because of the bond-related, expenses and that whole the complications that are associated with it. We intend to release the application again in September of this year, and to try and do it in as streamlined a fashion as we can with a lot of sort of benchmarks in place so that everybody feels like they can access the program. So we're excited about what it could look like moving ahead, working in conjunction with a sister nonprofit agency, but one that actually speaks to this, they have the same vested interest in the success of this program as we do.
Thank you, Liz. It's good to hear this will launch again in September. I particularly have an entity in my district that I think would be primed for growth. So this is very, very helpful to hear. Thank you, Representative Boer. I'm good with my questions right now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Representative Farrar. So I'm looking for hands while I'm waiting, I can ask a few questions as well. So Liz, on the cultural programs, one of the things we talked about in the Arts, Culture, and Tourism event that we had was really reaching some communities that might not know about the opportunity, and if they know about the opportunity, helping them to be able to apply, because sometimes it's the same organizations that have applied for grants in the past, right? So they're familiar and they're educated how to do it. So what are the plans working with humanities for reaching our, every population that we can to make sure that the opportunity, there's a level playing field across the board for those who are interested in these grants?
So that is a great question, one which we're still working out, but I think fundamentally the information that was collected by Connecticut Humanities in the administration of the Connecticut Cultural Fund, that's the $20 million pot of funding, $16 million, which were out to cultural organizations, arts, culture, humanity across the state, has created a fundamental sea change in terms of who we are talking to. We've been able to look at the applicants. There were about 670 applicants to the program, about 640 got funded. When we look at who was missing from that application pool that we already have seen in through the door, looking at 2019 and coming up through 2022, both for the Office of the Arts and Connecticut Humanities, we're looking at about 50 other folks out there. So that is a pool of 800 organizations that we are now reaching. And think about Connecticut, right? So we feel like when we map this all out, we have begun to really experience a whole change in who it is we're talking to. And we can see that when we look at who's been applying for grants through Office of the Arts and through Connecticut Humanities. I think the key here is the fact that a state agency is now working with a nonprofit to actually get this, and the tourism industry to actually get this work done together. And we're also working with Council of Governments, also working with designated regional service organizations, and Sustainable CT and small business. So we have this broad network of partners now, which really we didn't have in place before the pandemic. So I think this is like one of these cases of pandemic abundance.
Great, thank you. And working with the COGS helps to make sure it's disseminated pretty evenly, across the state, because in the past years, sometimes it would be concentrated in one area of the state over another. And we really want to make sure we're supporting all the regions as far as arts, culture, and tourism. And I do see so much more synergy now as to all of those different organizations coming together and working with you. And thank you for your leadership in bringing that together under pretty much one umbrella, which is no easy task, but thank you for that. Representative Piscopo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Chair. Commissioner, as I was looking through my stuff, the Manufacturers Assistance Act, that's always a pretty relatively huge amount of money. And it's so hard to get my head around this because there's different, do I understand there's a revolving loan fund, and then there's grants, and then there's loans also directly from that fund? I don't know what the allocations are for that, and where they're going. I'm having trouble going through my capital improvement budget here and just trying to nail that down. If it's too specific of a question, we could get it later, but I was just wondering if you had any kind of thoughts on that.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to try to connect to the Wi-Fi here. Can you repeat the question? It was what revolving funds that I represented?
The Manufacturers Assistance Act. I was just wondering what the allocations were for the out year and where they were going.
Yeah, I think we should provide as a follow-up, because the Manufacturers Assistance Act is a significant amount of money. And I mentioned there's three main uses that we have right now. The innovation corridor process, which are capital investments that the state would co-invest alongside the private sector. The Communities Challenge, which is a separate process, again, $100 million over 2 years, but that's also for capital projects. And then the job creation incentives is the last main part. So let us provide as a follow-up to you the different buckets on how we envision utilizing that revolving fund.
That'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner. And I was just wondering again about this community investment fund there. It's what role does it go to the commission agenda in a normal way, or does it kind of what allocations make it to the agenda at the actual bond commission agenda when they meet?
Yeah, Representative, I'm happy to jump in. Alexandra Dahm again. So a lot of the process is being worked out with a new administrator coming on board, and a lot of the key decisions about how much funding, how frequently we'll give it out, a lot of those are still to be made and to be brought to the board. But I think your question is around the different gates that a project has to go through before it gets to the bond commission agenda. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think at a very high level, we do know that there will be an application process to the CIF board, and then a project will not make it to the bond commission agenda if it did not make it through that CIF board application process. And timing and details are still TBD, but there will be one of the main points of the CIF board is to be that initial gate or application process before things get on the agenda.
Is it a simple vote? vote of the board, or what role does DECD play in that decision?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I got some background.
Is it a simple vote of that board, or what role does the agency play in that application process?
Again, I can answer at a high level only, but we're the administrators of the program. We won't be having the final say. So we would prepare an application, make sure it's ready and appropriate to go to the board. We're not going to be bringing any, unfilled out application or whatever. But for the most part, this will be by the final decision will be made by the board, and we're just facilitating that process and advising but facilitating.
And
I would just add, Representative. So I'm inside the list right now and better walk out hopefully. But yeah, as can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have DCD is one of 21 seats, but as Alexandra said, we're just administrator. But after the board approves it, it then goes to the governor's office for consideration and then a bond commission agenda. So it's a two-step process.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that understanding. I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Piscopo. And I just want to let you know that I also invited Corey on. He works in the Speaker's office and was really instrumental in crafting the bylaws and the structure based on the input of all the leadership and the BPRC, which was instrumental in bringing this program forward. And it is $175 million per year. So I know that Alexandra said, we're still determining the amount, but it is 175.
Sorry, if I misspoke, I meant amount that's available per project or things like that. I did not mean the overall total amount. Apologies.
Got it. That's okay. So DECD is going to administer the program, accept the applications, kind of flush them out a little bit, and send them to us a little bit more cleaned up, right? And help these municipalities to pull it all together, and then it'll come to the board, and then the board makes decisions. And then I think, Corey, where are you? Yes. Oh, there you are, Corey. And then there's a certain time frame of which the governor has to act, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I believe the governor has to act within if it's 30 or 60 days after the board approves. And then the governor has the ability to approve, reject, or send back to the board with modifications. But then Commissioner Lehman's point was correct about how it goes to the board, the governor's office, and then to the state bonding commission.
So Representative Piscopo, you may find comfort in knowing that you're co-chairs of the committee. So Senator Moore and I worked to make sure we were on that board as well, along with the finance chair. So I think there's a good cross-representation of who will be making the decisions and making the recommendations to the governor's office. And this is really, these projects are meant to be transformational projects within a community that really takes partnership, community, equity, and some great economic development programs. There's a whole criteria of what would be eligible.
Thank you, and it does give me comfort. Thank you that you're on there. Thank you, appreciate it.
And then, so on that note, my question to Alexandra is, Commissioner Lehman mentioned that you were in the process of hiring an administrator. Who is going to communicate to the municipalities that this option and this funding is available? Because I should note that these requests are not going to come from legislators. These requests need to come from, for example, chief elected official, so that it's aligned with their local vision, and they have significant skin in the game, with a recommendation from the legislative body that is within that municipality or within that region. So how are you going to let folks know that this fund is available and that they can apply? Is that going to be the administrator's role? And should we be doing that while we're waiting to hire somebody?
Yeah, that's a great question. We did have experience with something similar last summer, which was getting the word out about the Communities Challenge grant. that opened up last year. And so I think we're gonna follow a similar model, open to feedback if folks have other ideas, but we did really pretty broad publication of that opportunity through CCM, through the higher ed networks, through many legislators actually brought us into their communities to give webinars to the community. So open to doing that as well. With the we had meetings with the COGs to make sure that the COGs were aware of the opportunity. So I think between, COGs, CCM, higher ed, those are kind of our main, those are our main prongs to get the word out there. And we welcome other additional ideas, but I agree, we want to make sure these are coming from localities. That's certainly the intent. And so we're going to go far and wide, and it will be the responsibility of the administrator. So when I say we, I mean DECD as a whole, because the administrator will sit in DECD, so it will be the responsibility of that individual person as a member of DECD.
Okay, great. So we have had a couple of requests as chairs of bonding to ask if we would speak to municipalities and talk about the program. We've had those requests from legislators who want to educate their local leaders. So are you saying that DECD you will help take the lead in that role if a municipality needs a presentation, and do you need to wait for the administrator to be on board to do that?
David, if you think otherwise, jump in here. But yes, I think this administrator would be the face of that, or not the face of the program by any stretch, because it's obviously a huge board, but would be providing the content for those types of presentations, providing the detail for those types of presentations.
Yeah, if I could just underscore that point, at Rep. Borer, I think we want to get this administrator on board very quickly, again, this month or next month. But before we get the word out, and I think the administrator certainly, can and will go around the state, and we can do host roundtables and make sure that we get the word out. But as soon as we start advertising, getting the word out, there's going to be questions, and we want to make sure that there's someone, ideally more than one person, that's able to field those questions. And importantly, DECD is just the administrator here, as we've discussed. So we want to make sure that the program, the applications are all consistent with how Senator Looney and Speaker Ritter want to run CIF, as they are the co-chairs. So we're going to be administrator, but taking our direction from the committee and the co-chairs. And it's really important that that's the case. So we hope to have that administrator in place soon so we can start that process. And we're very focused on meeting the July 1 deadline in terms of being able to take applications.
Great, point well taken. Thank you. Representative Meskers.
Thank you very much. David, it's always good to speak with you, and thank you for the efforts you bring to the state on development. It's a kind of an overarching question here. As the projects get reviewed and screened, I'm hoping there may be a partial referral to both DEEP and the DOT, not in terms of gumming up the process, but given the infrastructure bills, the ARPA money, et cetera, I don't know that we envision the potential leverage from the federal government and its support, so that if we've got comprehensive transformative projects, I'm hoping they're being married potentially to federal funds that may be available, so we can maximize that leverage. Because that's one of the things we've been talking about. And I'm not sure it's all a new game book as far as I can see. I don't have a coherent view of what is state responsibility versus municipal responsibility in leveraging federal dollars. And some of these projects that are transformative may fall within those bailiwicks too. And I don't know how to further advise you than to say I think it's an important issue to be married to this 175 million, if possible. And love your thoughts on that.
No, I agree. Yeah, and I think in the role that Commissioner McFadden is playing around infrastructure as well, I think making sure Tim, Katie, Joe, that is really critical, so that we're coordinated, and to your point, Representative, leveraging the federal money as best we can and prioritizing projects as best we can. So we will do that, and that should be part of the CIF process.
And you're going to have a secondary problem, I think, is that I think we're still grabbing it at the state level. I think the municipals are so far behind us. So if we've got transformative municipal project, there'll be municipal leverage that's available too directly from the feds that we may need to kickstart them to look at. And I just recommend that as well.
Agreed. And in my mind, one of the key, that third-party leverage, whether it's federal, municipal, or private sector dollars coming to the table, again, that'll be part of the decision process for some of the CIF projects.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That was it for me.
Great, thank you. So hang on, I'm looking for other hands. Oh, I don't see any. I'm trying to toggle. So where's OWS? Oh, there you are, Kelly. So OWS is an agency in the governor's office or in DECD. So which group manages the funds for the Connecticut Career Connect program?
Great. So when OWS was first established, it was under an executive order. So we were a unit within DECD last year. In the state implementer bill, we became an independent agency and moved to the governor's office. So as the budget funds were coming through the process, the Career Connect workforce development funds were allocated to DECD because that's where we sat until the legislation moved us over to OWS. So we've been working very closely with DECD, and we've been moving funds through MOUs or MOAs into the Office of Workforce Strategy. And we're APO'd to the governor's office. So we utilize the governor's team as our administrative arm and the DAS SMART team.
Okay. Is there any other department that works that way under the governor's office? So the governor created an actual agency that now reports into him, like every other agency across Connecticut, right? DECD, DMV. So you're an independent agency that reports into the governor's office, even though the funding right now sits with DECD.
Yes, and I believe that happened kind of in timing through how our office was codified. At the same time, funding was going through the budgeting process. And David, if I'm misspeaking here, please correct me if I'm wrong. We're a very small agency, so currently it's myself, Niall, and two other members of our team. We do have a small budget expansion request in the governor's current budget, but we're APO'd to the governor's office. So we use their SMART team for, say, our legal and other administrative HR components to the work that we do.
And that's because
I like to think of you guys, Kelly, as small but mighty.
Yeah.
And you don't have your own administrative team because you're new and you're small, but is there a plan to have a different administrative team or the DECD team to help you with that administrative process?
So as I said, we have a small budget expansion request to add a legislative and communications person to our team as a regular employee, and then 2 additional durational staff to help us support our programming. We are bringing on some additional support through ARPA funds to manage and administer the ARPA federal dollar Career Connect program.
Okay. And then how do you work with the Department of Labor, right? So it's all about jobs and they have, programs. How do the 2 agencies or 2 departments work together?
Right, we work very closely with DOL. We have standing meetings with the commissioner and deputy commissioner. The Office of Workforce Strategy is the strategic and implementation arm of the workforce strategies for the state. And DOL is the compliance and reporting components of WIOA, and they manage a few of the WIOA titles as well under the federal legislation. Our office works very closely with the state workforce development board system. So there's 5 workforce boards. We meet with the workforce boards every week, and we coordinate and collaborate on the workforce strategy that we're implementing, as well as with DOL.
Okay. All right, I think I got it. I don't see any questions around, further questions around that. Thank you. I just want to move back to the economic action plan. So in the economic action plan, and let me know if I got this right, there's the innovation corridor, right? And then there's the Connecticut Community Challenge, which is being paid for. That's $100 million, and that's being paid for through both revolving account and bonding. Is that all being paid for with bonding funds, and which line item is that being paid for? How is that working?
So I just want to be precise here, and Kyle can correct me if I'm wrong. The total price tag, potential price tag for both of those, and Rep. Bohr, there's other initiatives. So the small business support, the manufacturing assistance, that's all part of the action plan too. But the two initiatives you mentioned, Innovation Corridor, which is $100 million price tag over the next 3 to 5 years, and then $100 million for the Connecticut Communities Challenge. All of that was initially envisioned to be bonding. I believe there was a proposal to use 20 million of ARPA dollars in lieu of bonding this year. So some federal dollars as a possibility. But if not, it would be, let's assume it is bonding for now, which is what we initially contemplated. It would have been the Manufacturers Assistance Act revolving funds. So reutilizing payments that have come in from other MAA loans over the years, in addition to Urban Act was the other funding source that we were looking to. So those were the two main funding vehicles for those projects over that 3 to 5 year period.
Okay, so because I'm just looking at I don't see that funding in your bonding. So that was originally the plan, but may not be the plan, and some of it is coming out of Urban Act, is what you're saying.
We can provide this as a follow-up report, but
yeah,
the revolver is separate because those are authorizations, loans that have already been repaid that we're reutilizing to be efficient with our bonding. So it's not part of the MAA authorization. It's a separate revolving fund that we're using.
Okay. Okay. So then a takeaway is you're going to, somebody is going to send to the subcommittee members a listing of all the revolving loans that currently exist under DECD and how they're being used.
Yeah, I would say, yes, I would say it slightly differently. It's the revolver. So the loans themselves don't revolve, but basically where we've had repayments from previous authorizations. This gets to Representative Piscopo's question before too. We'll provide how we envision utilizing our revolving funds to put forth the economic action plan, as well as the small business support initiative that I talked about before.
Great. Okay. All right. I'm a black and white kind of person myself. There's a lot of programs. It's a lot of money, and I think we just need to
yes.
out on either a spreadsheet or just so that we're clear as we move forward with looking at these line items. So I don't think the only remaining question I would have is around the cannabis loans, the $50 million. And I think what I heard you say before is that it's just not ready. It's planned for 2023 because that's
well, no. Ginny Ray is the executive director, and she is on, and we are asking for 10 of the 50 million for a revolving fund as the cannabis market gets off the ground. But Ginny, do you want to provide a bit more context on your current thinking?
Sure. We are in the process of creating the low interest loan program to provide access to capital for those folks who will be licensed this year. So we're expecting the first licenses, provisional licenses, and licenses to be available to applicants around June. And so with that, because of the federal restrictions, many of the applicants will need to have access to capital to get their businesses up and running.
Got it. Thank you. So my bottom line question is, do you need this 50 million in the fiscal year 2023? Because this is unallocated balance of $50 million.
We will need, yes, we will need the rest of the funds because not only are we required to create access to capital, we're also required to create access to municipalities and nonprofits to assist with rehabbing buildings and locations for cannabis businesses, in addition to some other programs for workforce training in the cannabis area as well.
Okay, right, great, thank you. And then I only have one final question, and Commissioners, probably for you, it's around the nonprofit unallocated balance of about $12 million. Is your department prepared if we allocated, if the bond commission allocated that funding to be able to administer another nonprofit grant program? Because, you know, as a legislative body, we put that funding in, we authorize it because we want to see it get out on the street, because we know how challenging it is for our nonprofits. So what is the plan to help take that $12 million and give it to the organizations that are in need?
Yeah, I would just say, broadly, Representative, you know, when there's been programs, grant programs, bond funded or otherwise, you know, Liz and the team at DCD have been very quick and we've gotten that money out to the CP Humanities program that we referenced before as an example of that. My understanding of the 12 million here is kind of what I believe is for a West Hartford Children's Museum, where there doesn't seem to have been as much movement from the entity to access that funding. So we can provide more as a follow-up, but I think there's been more of an inertia issue with that specific entity as opposed to the grant funding for cultural institutions more broadly, which we certainly want to do and get money out of there very quickly.
Okay, so I think we need to get a better understanding from, because that funding was put aside for the Science Center, the Maritime Aquarium, right? The Children's Museum. Do they need that? I know what their answer is going to be, right? And what is our plan if we put that funding aside for them? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we should have a follow-up on it, because my litmus test is typically when there is that great a need, and we're hearing it very directly and frequently, not just from the entity, but from legislators and other stakeholders. And I don't want to speak for the whole team here, but they can jump in. I think some of those entities have been talking to us, but others, there has not been that, that voice that we've heard in terms of the need.
Right. And of course we want to help support them, but we also put that money aside before everybody was, a lot of these organizations were getting their federal funding. So I think we need to reconnect and say, what do you really need today based on the funding you've already received?
Yeah, and if I could just, Kyle, were you going to say something? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just want to say, so 2.6 of the 12.6, we're in conversations with Norwalk because that's their remaining allocation. So that will be needed. But I do agree we should have conversations about the remaining 10 for West Hartford's Children's Museum.
Yeah, time to meet again. Okay, and then my wonderful co-chair, Senator Moore, has questions.
While there's quiet in my house, I have workers here and I'm doing 2 meetings. I had a question for Jenny Ray. So you will need to draw down on that money, that you need to have it in place to draw down to pay some of those things off, almost like a bank?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify that, you would need the money all at once.
The 10 million we would need all at once, yes.
All right, thank you.
Going back. Okay. Well, I don't see any other hands. So we want to thank you all. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to your entire team. Thank you for everything you're doing and for coming before us today. We will be having a public hearing on the bond bill, we hope next week, which means we'll be making adjustments the following week to be voted out of the Finance Committee. So any additional information you can provide that will be helpful for us in our decision-making process will be greatly appreciated.
We will do that very quickly. And thank you all for having us and for the questions.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Okay, Christina, are you there?
I'm here. We do have people from Department of Housing, but I know we're a little early.
What do you think, Senator Moore? Should we go early or should we wait till 12:30 to the schedule? I mean, I'm fine either way.
I would go early.
Okay.
If they're here.
Are they all here, Christina, from Housing?
The commissioner is, and I think I saw a couple staff people as well.
Hi, Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
How are you? Is your whole team here? Are you guys ready to go?
Yeah, my whole team, Michael Santora. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I am.
I think it's the 2 of us today, right? Michael?
I'm ready to go if you are, Commissioner.
Yeah, I think it's just the 2 of us, right?
I don't know if Miguel was going to be here or not. So
we're ready. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then
we're good.
Well, then we want to welcome you, Commissioner, and your big team, Michael. And Thank you for being here. As you know, it's a short session, so we did the bond bill last year, and we met with you at that time, and you talked to us about your needs, and this is an opportunity for us to update that bond bill based on what's transpired over the past year, what either additional funds you need or what funds should be reduced based on no longer having that need. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your presentation with respect to bonding.
Thank you, Representative Boder, and hi, Senator Moore and the members of the General Obligation Bonding Subcommittee. We did submit our written responses to the questions that you sent to us, but I will give you a little overview of what we have been doing in the department. So in the past 3 years, we were able to complete 6,897 units. With about $300 million for a state bond, and we raised $1.4 billion in private investments. So that was in the construction activities expenses. On the construction right now, we have 4,376 units, $240 million in bond investment, and about a little over $1 billion in private investments. We're doing this in collaboration, very close collaboration with CHFA, utilizing their resources and our resources. We have been able to really make progress on the construction of new affordable units. It has been challenging through the pandemic, but we did not stop. With my team, they were 100% working from home, and we were able to accomplish a lot. I will stop there, and I will be open for questions if you have any from the responses that we submitted.
I'm sorry, I was muted. You went so quickly, I figured I'd be on mute for a little while. I'm just looking at your agency report. So right now there's unallocated $246 million in the flexible housing program, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then another $100 million for fiscal year 23. Do you anticipate that you need that $100 million for fiscal year 23?
Yes. We have in the report, one of the tables that was submitted, we have about 81 projects right now under consideration. So there's projects that we are planning to fund, and some of them are very on the way with the obligations of bonding. And then we also have a process that we have right now to receive new application. It's a development engagement process, and we're gonna open up that in May. So we are very on the way to be able to utilize all the resources. It is the funds that we have for our production, and we have pretty aggressive goals for this year.
Okay, all right. So can you explain the difference between the flexible housing program and the housing trust fund?
I will ask Michael, since he knows in deep this two programs, I'm gonna ask him to respond to that question. Michael.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Representative Boer and members of the committee. The Affordable or Flexible Housing Program is the most flexible production program that we have. It can do and does almost every kind of affordable housing you can imagine, from single room occupancy or SROs, all the way up to and including homeownership opportunities. It can serve households and individuals who earn up to 100% of the area median income. However, we generally target the affordable housing program to our deeper income targeted households, 30, 50, 60% of area median income. We do go up to 80% of area median income. We generally do not serve that gap, the 80 to 100, although by statute we can. That wiggle room's there to ensure long-term compliance. The Housing Trust Fund program, conversely, is a little less flexible than the Affordable Housing Program and is best used in mixed income properties, where we're working with a private developer who's leveraging other kinds of funds and is serving, at least for some of his units, a higher income population. The Housing Trust Fund can serve up to 120% of the area median income. Again, we generally target 100% of AMI with our Housing Trust Fund dollars, but particularly as we move forward with some new home ownership initiatives that the Commissioner has initiated, we'll be using our Housing Trust Fund to assist new home buyers.
Okay. Okay. Just looking for, and I'm going to turn it over to Representative Maskers, and then I'll ask my follow-up questions.
First of all, thank you very much for coming before us to testify. I'm on, right? Okay. So I really appreciate the efforts of the group. I expect that we'll be working very collaboratively in Greenwich. You're probably aware that given the rise in rental values, we've been kind of under siege by 830G, which is kind of a clumsy effort to build affordable housing, in my humble view, because of the 70-30 ratio. So I would hope that I could help, that we could set up a meeting with our Planning and Zoning Department and potentially with our Housing Trust Fund, which we've set up, to look at some of the resources and talk about what's available in the oncoming years, and also to work to see if there's opportunities for, in addition to the 81 projects, for us to talk to you about potentially additional projects.
Absolutely. We are working very closely with the Housing Authority and have provided resources to a couple of projects. They just called us last week for another project, but yes, definitely, we will be more than happy to participate in those meetings.
All right, and I want to thank you for all you do. Now, I guess the question I'll go to is, so Dorinda was asking whether you needed your money, essentially, in a nice way. So the unallocated resources and what you've got allocated, the 81 projects are well in excess of, if you were to approve them all, would that clean you out per se? I mean, in other words, like, how are you set up financially in the next year or within this fiscal year in terms of, will you expect that you will allocate all of the funds, or you will potentially have some remaining funds at the end of the year?
So we will, because of the projects that we have in the pipeline, we created actually a process where we bring potential developments with a very low threshold criteria for the developers. They don't have to spend a lot of money. And we create a pipeline from projects that are in the pre-development stages to the finance and to construction, and then we'll move them to completion. So we do have a pipeline of projects that we have in pre-development that we haven't funded. And we have, as I mentioned before, 81 projects that we are under consideration. So as much as resources we can promote these developments, and they don't have to wait for years to come. We need the affordable units that you mentioned. That is pretty critical because the inflation on rents has just going crazy, and nobody can afford. So people that are with minimum wages or above the 50%, they cannot find any apartments anywhere, not only Greenwich, but it's just all over. So yes, we will. We are intended to use all the resources that we can get and more.
And that'll be the follow-up, if I might, and more. So
if I may add just briefly, understanding the development process, we need to have access to the money in order to make a financial commitment. So if we have the allocation in hand for a project today, we commit to it. It may be 9 to 12 months before they actually get in the ground, but we need that authorization in hand in order to be able to make that financial commitment. So it may seem that we're a little behind. That is, we have a lot of authorization in our hand. That may be true, but the $246 million in Flex and the $47 million in trust fund are going to be committed to projects, that is allocated to specific projects in the next 6 to 12 months. That would essentially run us out of money. We would not be able to commit to any new projects unless we had the coming authorization for July 1. So it is critical from our standpoint to be able to continue to build that pipeline and keep development, the development flow moving to have that authorization.
So you're basically, you expect to be booked out by July in terms of your commitments, and you need the authorizations by July to continue with future commitments. Keep the pipeline full.
We won't be all fully committed by July. We will be probably by December of this year. So yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
You all set, Representative Meskers? Okay, great. Representative Piscopo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just kind of want to try and get a handle on this. We're looking at like $346 million and then some, and then $48 million also for affordable housing. My question would be, your 81 units will exhaust, 81 potential units will exhaust that fund? Is that the how I interpret the last answer to the questioner?
I have a little hard time understand because of the echo that I have here. Michael, did you get that question?
I did, Commissioner. Representative Piscopo. The 81 projects that we are actively considering funding right now would in fact allocate or use up all of our existing authorizations, the $246 million in flex and the $47 million in trust fund. Yes. So in order for us to actually continue to take new applications, which is our intent within the next month or so, we need that future authorization to be able to continue to build the pipeline and move the needle.
Thank you. And can you give just a summary of what we're after here? Is it 100% affordable housing units or is it a portion of a developer's development?
Commissioner, you want okay. So the answer is yes to both. So we fund projects that are fully affordable, that is 100% affordable. We also fund projects that are mixed income, where we're working particularly with private developers to get a portion of the projects affordable. Now, our priority are those projects that are 80% affordable or greater, okay? Will we fund projects that are less than 80% of affordable units? The answer is absolutely yes. But we're looking for deeper income targeted units in particular in that in those projects. Okay.
I understand. So that gives me a better understanding of what the average cost is then, because it seems like I can't do the math this quick, but it just seems like the average per unit was quite high.
So, Representative, what we have been doing is to keep basically a more or less a cap for state resources. So for deep targeted units between 30% and 50% of AMI, we keep it at 120,000. So that we make sure that even if they exceed, they will have to bring some of that private money, so that we're not just the one that are going to be funding all that. Some supportive housing do need for us to provide 100% because they're providing that services and they're 100%. But for those that are in the multifamily with the private developers and their income, mixed income, those we make sure that did not exceed our cap.
It just occurred to me, and maybe an unfair question, but it's a public. It would then be a public construction project with that kind of funding. Prevailing wage and all that kicks in. Yes.
In a lot of the projects that we are financing outside of the private developer deals, yes, they are generally considered to be public works projects, and we do in fact pay prevailing wage. As a matter of fact, those projects where we use our federal dollars, we often have to use Davis-Bacon wages, which in some instances is even higher than prevailing wage.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Piscopo. Commissioner, you mentioned that you don't go over the cap. Is there ever any exceptions to that?
No, I say that sometimes we do. Like if we have projects that have supportive housing and they're almost 100%, they do need the capital subsidy. So we will look at those. It's for the private and for the mixed income units that we try not to exceed. We might review it if the need is there and we do really need those units based on the community. So we'll look at the whole underwriting, but we're trying to be mindful with public dollars and making sure that we get the most benefit that we can.
Got it. Okay. So I'm just going to thank you for all the information on the flexible housing program. I just want to turn to some of the other unallocated balances. I see that there's $10 million in abatement of lead in homes. And, you know, that $10 million seems to have been, when is the last time we issued or we allocated funding for abatement of lead in homes?
So we actually got $5 million this past December from the commission, from the bond commission. And we are working with the Children's Hospital to deploy those resources. The pandemic put all of us behind. But we're anticipating that the rest of the money will get out this coming year.
Okay, so you're advocating to the governor's office to put that funding to be allocated on the bond commission?
So Michael, do we have the schedule for that?
Yeah, I can call that up, Commissioner. Give me 2 seconds. Yes, I believe within the next 12 months, all of that additional $10 million will be sought from bond commission.
Okay, thank you. And then on the $4 million for the nursing facilities, can you explain a little bit more about, it says it's for the nursing facilities, but it says nursing facilities that are right sizing.
I'm going to have Michael, you know.
This is a very, I don't want to say very old initiative. This initiative has been around for a while. This, if you would recall, I want to say 7 years ago or so, maybe 6 years ago, there was a huge problem in the state relative to nursing home closures. And in conjunction with our partners at the Department of Social Services, who were getting funds through CMS to do what was called nursing home diversification or right sizing. It was an initiative to try to encourage nursing home owners and operators to look for alternative uses for their facilities. And CMS and the state of Connecticut would provide incentives and resources to help them do that. This portion of the nursing home diversification or right sizing initiative was targeted at the capital improvements or modifications necessary as part of a nursing home conversion to an alternative use. We used quite a bit of money when it first came out, but as the nursing home closures dialed back and diversification itself dialed back, these funds were not needed at the time. We understand or have been informed that CMS and the Department of Social Services continues to look at nursing home diversification, and we have these funds should they come across an opportunity to convert a nursing home to an alternative use.
So do we have to wait for CMS to let us know that? I mean, if there's a facility that would be converting, these funds would still be available, right?
So this is should OPM and the Department of Social Services identify a nursing home that is going to close, they then convene a meeting with the owner and operator of that nursing home to try to work with them to find an alternative use for the building.
Okay, an alternative use meaning it may not be a nursing home.
Oh, it would not be a nursing home. That's the whole point of the initiative, is to convert that nursing home to a use other than a nursing home. We've seen some facilities be turned into affordable housing. We've seen others become rehabilitation centers. We've seen facilities basically get completely out of the industry and move to other uses. And that's specifically what these funds are targeted for.
Okay. Because we do, you know, not to get off track, but we do have a nursing home that closed in West Haven and the University of New Haven worked with them, and the property is now, a facility, an educational component of their health program.
I would not be surprised if they didn't access some of the CMS money to do that conversion.
Okay, all right, I get it. Okay, all right. And then we talked about the lead abatement. We talked about the nursing home. Oh, the Homelessness Prevention and Response Fund. There's $12 million in that unallocated. Can you talk to that? Like what? So I just want to say that, the subcommittee, we discuss often that as a legislative body, we authorize these funds because we want to see them get out there, right? Like we prioritize where we would like to see the funds allocated. So when they're not allocated, it's a bit frustrating for us. So just, we're always asking, how can we help get those funds on the street? Because they're already counting towards our debt limit, right?
So briefly, and then Michael, please add anything that you may think we need to add to it. This program has been a little challenging to administer. So we are planning for a commitment that was previously made before my time to go to the Bond Commission for $1.9 million. The 10 million additional, we are trying to analyze and see what's the best way to utilize these resources. As I said, we haven't had a chance to really deep into it, but it has been very challenging to be able to deploy these resources. So we will be looking into what we could do to best utilize them for the supportive housing, because we do need some supportive housing dollars. It's just that the way that was designed is not the most easy to manage.
So what is challenging for you? Is it the legislative language that's tying your hand? Is it staff and resources? What do we need to do to help support you to help?
The design of the program. So it's on us to redesign the program to make it easier to utilize it. It's a little complicated.
Okay, so then we need to take a look at the language and see what initially those funds were authorized for, which will beg the question, why weren't they used for what we authorized them for? But then, I do know that plans change, right? So we need to hear from you what we need to do legislatively to change the language to help create a plan that gets the money out there. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
And if I can add very briefly, a lot of this money did get out under the HPRF model. And the remaining 1.9 will go to that contract. The effectiveness of the program, we're not getting the bang for our buck. We believe there are better ways to use these dollars than the current design of the program. We have a contract with a service provider or a series of service providers who are doing this, and to a greater or lesser extent, it is being effective. But we have other models in our homeless system that are more cost effective, get better results at a lower cost. What we want to look at is how we can use these funds to tie into those initiatives to have the better impact, the better outcome in a less costly way. Our intent is to do that. I would hopefully within the next year. But
we're working on the bond bill now.
Exactly. So, understood.
And you may not have the answers now, but if that's going to leave $10 million unallocated for homelessness, and I can appreciate that you want to make sure that it's spent, in the best way that it can be. And we want to make sure that you spend it in the best way that you can. We don't want to put funding into a line item that we authorized and then find out that the program doesn't work. We don't want to continue to fund a program that really isn't impactful or effective.
Absolutely.
But if we need to change that. So I would hate to see that 10 million continue to sit there while we figure that out. So
we'll make it a priority. to, and actually we have been looking at it, how we can make it easier. And we can come up with some, I know Steve has been working on it. So the time frame will be shorter than a year.
Okay, but to my point, our bond bill, right, would have to make that legislative change. The language would need to be changed in this bill. And the public hearing is next week, and then we vote on the bill probably the following week. So if we don't make that legislative change in the next 2 weeks, then that means you have to wait until the next bond bill, which is not until next, March or April. So if there is anything that you have in the works that you think can help us change that language for this bond bill, we need to do that. Okay. Otherwise we can't get the money out there.
Understood.
Okay, got it. Representative Meskers, thank you.
Yeah, it's only by happenstance I've been listening closely to this to the conversation. Thank you, Chair. I think you've been very insightful. On the nursing home funded, on reconfiguration, et cetera, I would highly encourage you to have a conversation with the Office of Healthcare Strategies in the repurposing of those nursing homes, whether they look, I can tell you from personal experience, one of the issues that I noticed in the state is the lack of hospice services as well, right? So I think we may be putting people in nursing homes or hospitals at a very difficult point in their life. So I'm not sure whether there's opportunity there. So the Office of Healthcare Strategies will look at the facilities and think about where the state is spending its scarce resources, and may be able to direct some of your funding to create facilities that better serve the public. So I would definitely recommend, if we're going to remove them from the nursing home list, to bring them forward that way. I would highly recommend you consider that.
Thank you, Representative.
Okay, thanks.
That's an excellent idea, Representative. Thank you for bringing that forward.
You're welcome.
Representative Piscopo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering about the Energy Conservation Loan Fund. That you haven't seen a allocation for a long time with that fund. It's been years. What's going on with that? Is there any applications in? Has there been any movement on it? You have a pretty sizable unallocated balance there.
Michael?
Certainly. Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Piscopo, the unallocated balance is only $750,000. And I say that because the revolving loan fund itself has a little over $4 million in it, and it rotates and is very active. I don't have the program statistics on the number of loans that we've done over the last year through the Energy Conservation Loan Program. But if it's something you're interested in, we could certainly get that for you. The program is extremely active, and it is a real revolving loan fund. Funds go out, rehabilitation gets done to do energy conservation improvements, loans get repaid, the money rolls back out. This $750,000 unallocated balance is there should the fund get below a critical level where they would have to stop taking applications and stop being able to process energy conservation loans. That would give us the time to go back to you, the legislature, and say, we need more allocation. This is, for lack of better terminology, the stopgap fund should the balance in the energy conservation loan revolving loan fund itself get below a critical level.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification again. I didn't see the allocations, and I would have seen them, I guess, if it was out of a revolving loan. The treasurer takes care of that. It's one of his.
No, Representative. We actually have a private contractor, third-party contractor. Many of you probably know of them. They're called Capital for Change, or C4C. They've been running the Energy Conservation Loan Program for us for many, many years, either under their old hat as well as under their new name, Capital for Change. They leverage the Energy Conservation Loan Program with a number of other federally funded programs that promote energy conservation and energy improvements. So we actually use our ECL to leverage other federal dollars to make improvements all across the board.
I see. And then they come under the state auditors then?
We get annual audits for an independent CPA firm on their organization every year. It's not the state auditors of public accounts, but there is an annual fiscal audit, substantial and very detailed, on that organization and the ECL fund in particular every year.
Thank you again. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Piscopo. Does anybody else have any other questions? Well, I don't see any other hands, so we want to thank you for being here today. Thank you for all you do for the state of Connecticut, and we look forward to getting that additional information in the next, I know I'm pushing, but we want to make sure that we do our due diligence before we move forward with any updates to the bond bill. We want to make sure the funds are being used wisely for the state of Connecticut. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
So Christina, we're a little ahead of schedule. I know we have a break from 1 to, where are we? We have a break from 1 to 1:30 and it's 12:50. So do you have a screen share that you could put up for anybody who's tuning in? See how great you are. Okay, so to the rest of the committee, we will be back at 1:30. It is our last agency we're hearing from for this session, for today and this session. And it's Office of Policy and Management. So it's, one of our largest agencies, and I know everybody's looking forward to that. So see you in a little while. Hey everyone, we're just waiting. We're just going to give it a few minutes for everybody to come back. So just hang tight, maybe like 3 or 4 minutes.
I'm here, Dorinda.
As Senator Christie said. Okay. Hey, Christina, are you there? Oh. Hi. You're always there, Christina. You're always in the ready. Well, welcome back, everyone, to our bond subcommittee. We are the subcommittee of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. We are the bonding subcommittee members who are evaluating the bond bill for this session. And as part of that, we've been meeting with the agencies across the state of Connecticut. This is actually our last day and our last agency that we're meeting with. So I guess we saved the best for last, OPM. Or maybe it's the biggest agency, or maybe there's the most questions, but in any event, we're so happy to have you here. I see, let's see, I know Senator Morris is back on, Representative Piscopo, our ranking is back on. I know Senator Huang was in and out. And just for those watching, you will see representatives coming in and out of the meeting. And that is because we have simultaneous meetings going on as we conduct this one as well. So with that, I think Jeff Beckham, the acting OPM secretary, you're going to probably lead the discussion today, I'm assuming?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well then, Jeff, thank you for being here. Thank you to your team for being here. And the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Representative Boer, Senator Moore, Senator Huang, Representative Piscopo, distinguished members of the General Bonding Subcommittee. I am Jeffrey Beckham, Acting Secretary for the Office of Policy and Management. You should have received our testimony and an attachment a couple of days ago with quite a bit of information for you. So I won't read all of that to you, just indicate to you that we are obviously in the middle of a 2-year biennial budget. We are making some modest midterm adjustments this year in the bonding program, the capital program. And our testimony indicated those 2 major items that we're talking about today. The Capital Equipment Purchase Fund is going up by $15 million. We have, our agencies are experiencing increased capital equipment needs as a result of some of the work from home policies that have become more prevalent in the COVID era, and they've diminished our current unallotted balances for those purposes. So we're looking for an additional $15 million in fiscal year 23 to help ensure that our agencies have the necessary funds to finance those equipment needs, especially those related to the new, more prevalent teleworking situation. We're adding this year $75 million which we expect will be the state's share of the matching funds necessary to access some of the federal infrastructure funds that are going to be made available under the new federal bill that passed recently. We think this bill is going to provide the state with an opportunity to address many of our infrastructure goals, including climate change resiliency, improvements to clean drinking water, access to clean drinking water, some transportation support. The bulk of the bill is transportation, and increased access to broadband technology. It's envisioned that this $75 million will provide about $50 million to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for various programs around climate resiliency and water. We expect there will be both formula-based and competitive grants available under this federal legislation. We're hoping this $50 million for next fiscal year will be more than adequate to access whatever DEEP can go for in those programs next year. We're asking for $10 million for the Department of Public Health for programmatic matching requirements for some of the infrastructure that funds that will be made available to them. As you know, there's quite a bit of lead line replacement money coming down to us. DPH will be accessing some of that, we trust. We've also built in a $15 million contingency for either competitive funds or for use in future years. The second page of my testimony lists about 17 various pots of money that are within the OPM purview. These are the unallocated balance numbers for FY22 as of the end of last calendar year. We have had unallocated balances at the end of the last fiscal year in the amount of about $463 million. In last session, you approved an additional 458 in new authorizations, which brought the total unallocated balance to 921 million. Fiscal year to date, this fiscal year, OPM has allocated, the Bond Commission has allocated about almost $300 million, leaving about $625 million in unallocated balances. The allocations that we've done in this fiscal year to date, we've had a couple of Bond Commission meetings since last July, represents about 32% of the OPM's available unallocated balance from the start of the fiscal year. Attachment A, which you received the other day, provides an overview of each of those programs that are listed above on this page with those indicated unallocated amounts. I have with me several members of our team who can provide more detail as well to your questions. And with that, I will make ourselves available to you.
I was on mute, sorry about that. Okay, I don't see any hands yet, so I will ask a couple of questions while folks are thinking about their next question. And hang on one second, I'm going back to your unallocated balances. Well, actually, you know what? Let's start with IT. I know that you did send to us some information around the IT. Last year, OPM asked for a significant amount of funds for IT upgrades. But when we met with the other agencies through the course of the past week and a half, we didn't really hear a lot about upgrades that are happening across the agencies. So wondering if you could speak to that, if you have, some top priority plans, or are the agencies just, are you working in partnership with the agencies? There seemed to be a disconnect is the bottom line.
I know the bulk of our IT program is, I see Mr. Vittner is online here. He could probably give you a chapter and verse there. We have the policy side of IT, and DAS has most of the operational side of IT, but Mr. Vittner is online and he has quite a bit of knowledge there. Oh, you're on mute, John. Oh, we may have lost John.
Oh, he's frozen.
The bulk of the projects for the funding that is requested is for a combination of two things. One, there are about 18 active projects that have received partial allocations. So those projects are anything from cybersecurity improvements through DAS to content management initiatives for scanning and digitizing many of the state's records. So those 18 projects are at least partially allocated. Many of those projects are multi-year, so it would be to complete those projects. And secondly, we have earmarks for several projects that are planned for, including things like Clean Slate, the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, their electronic health record system, And finally, there are several smaller projects that are planned and underway for the CREATES, for the report that was issued from the Boston Consulting Group. I'm happy to give any more details if you'd like.
Well, would you be able to send us a list, please, of the projects and the status, because it is 90 million and we just, want to see where we're at with the funds and what more or less is needed for those projects?
Absolutely, we'll send that.
Okay, great. And then I just wanted to, I could give you an update on the health disparity. So Jeff, I know that you're new. So I'm going to recap some of the conversations we had with the prior OPM secretary, just so that we're all on the same page. So that health disparities, $25 million was something that our committee had really advocated for. That was before we knew how much we were getting in ARPA funds, but really the focus was to help support organizations that would help provide quality, affordable access to care without any regard for obstacles that they may have in accessing that care. So I know that we have some email chains going to set that up, but just want to let you know that that is something that is important to us. And over the course of the year, the OPM put out an RFI to organizations. FQHCs are being considered as part of that health disparity because they are the health agencies in the community. But again, that was before they received the federal funding. So part of that RFI, if FQHCs are going to look to be recipients of that funding, one of the things we ask of them is to let us know what federal funding they've already received and what they're using it for. So, just letting you know the status, that's where that came from.
I appreciate that. I know that we've got a meeting coming with you on that. My colleague, Claudio Galtieri, who may be on the line, is going to be schooling me on that. He's been giving me a crash course on a variety of health and human services programs, including that one. So we look forward to that conversation. Okay, great. Thanks. And Representative Piscopo, thanks for indulging me and letting me ask my questions, because I actually have a hard stop for another meeting at 3:15, and Senator Moore is going to take over. So thank you for letting me go. So my next question is for Mark Pelka. I thought I saw you coming on. Right?
Hi, Representative. I'm here, ma'am. Thank you.
Hi, how are you? Can you talk a little bit about the body camera program? I know we're asking for an extension in that language to allow more departments to apply for that funding. Do you have a sense of how many have applied, or what is the obstacle for us to continue to disseminate that funding out to those departments?
Thanks, Representative, for your question. 55 departments have participated in the program and received reimbursement. There are, I believe, 3 additional departments we are preparing to submit to the Bond Commission. So when those are submitted, it'll be 58 departments. I spoke with my coworker prior to this meeting. She indicated she has approximately 12 additional departments that are in some degree of progress with our division regarding the body camera program. Our division has administered the program since 2016, and that individual has administered it from the beginning. So we have developed quite a lot of experience interacting with the departments. We try to provide service from the initial. We encourage departments to contact us at the beginning when they are in touch with vendors and are exploring the purchases that are available for reimbursement under the body camera program. Our office is also familiar with different packages that departments have completed with various vendors. And so there's a fair amount of back and forth that goes on prior to OPM submitting for requested reimbursement from the Bond Commission for the purchases. Our team has also attended multiple Connecticut Police Chiefs Association expos to set up a table to be there for chiefs passing through to discuss the program. And we've developed an announcement document that was first released in February of 2021, introducing changes to the program under statutes created under the Act Concerning Police Accountability, and introducing to departments what this program can cover regarding reimbursement. The Act Concerning Police Accountability extended the life of the program only to June 30th of this year, 2022, which is approximately the time that the requirement that law enforcement units have officers use body and dash cams, which is why, Representative, we asked for an extension of the program for one more year. It's not uncommon for departments to submit requests throughout the year. It could be when municipal governments are making decisions about allocations, or when police departments are ready to make the purchases. So we have always functioned on a rolling basis within available resources on a case-by-case basis, which is why we thought the extension would make sense for departments that may have a request in progress just prior to or even in the period following the effective date. I've spoken for a while. I'll just mention one quick thing also, Representative, is that we try to make clear that OPM is not responsible for enforcing the requirement of body cameras. We just want our program to be here and to be available for interested departments. So we do not have a crystal clear picture of the departments that have not participated in the program. So we don't know whether they have body cameras. I would suspect that several of the departments, I wouldn't put an adjective on it, but I would say that we do not assume that a department that has not used our program, therefore, does not have body cameras, because there are other funding streams that are available for them to make those purchases. We just want the program to be there and be available when the department comes knocking.
Great, thanks. I was going to make that point, that just because we've funded 58 with an additional 12, it doesn't mean that that's how many departments have body cameras. There could be a lot more. So we know what the percentage is today. You've been managing the program since 2016. What was the percentage back then? Like how has it changed over the years?
The program was created in 2016, and purchases in year 2016, the birth of the program, reimbursements were allowed for prior years. So I will mention to you, Representative, the ranges and the reimbursement rates, and they begin in 2012. I don't want to lead to any confusion. So from January 1, 2012 to June 30th, 2018, departments were eligible for 100% reimbursement. I was not here at the time, but my understanding is that is because the program was functioning as an incentive for the departments to purchase the body cameras. Following 2018, the reimbursement rate dropped to 50%. Therefore, from July 1, 2018 to June 30th, 2021, there was a 50% reimbursement rate for eligible expenses. So the statutes lay out what is eligible. The reimbursement rate refers to how much is eligible. Under the statutes, it spells out three components of purchases that are eligible for the program. Number one, it's body cameras. Number two, dash cameras. Number three, either cloud storage, 1 year of a subscription, or the purchase of a server. So maybe on a case-by-case basis, I could describe, before I do that, Representative, I will mention that the Act Concerning Police Accountability created two reimbursement rates. For municipalities that are distressed, they're eligible for 50% reimbursement from July 1, the period following enactment of police accountability forward. Non-distressed municipalities are eligible for 30% reimbursement moving forward. So I think that reflects the continuation of the kind of declining rate of reimbursement as the program moved perhaps from incentive to its new form. So that's typically how we operate the program, is we view the statutes as the foundations. We sometimes encounter areas where discretion needs to be applied. When that discretion is applied, we include it in the announcements or on our website so that that information is available to everyone, in addition to the one-on-one conversations that we may have with individuals. So as I was trying to get to before with the case-by-case basis, what I see typically occur is a department will contact our division. We will provide the announcement, references to the website, and directly to the person who administers the program in our division to begin discussing what their plans are for reimbursement. And that will guide them through a process where they're aware of what's eligible for reimbursement and what rate they can expect to be reimbursed for. I think that front end work is important because it enables our division to submit to the State Bond Commission a package that makes sense to the department. There may be exceptions that I may have missed from my time here, but or preceding me, but generally the function is that the package is developed between our division and the department, and there's briefings provided to the department that we are presenting this to the State Bond Commission, and afterwards we inform them of the reimbursement that's provided. So I hope that's a helpful picture.
Yeah, that's a very helpful picture. And I would just ask, is the feedback that you get that the reimbursement rate is too low? Could that be one of the reasons why this is underutilized? Because we do have funds we've authorized for this program, but we don't see the number of departments applying for the funding. So we don't have a sense of whether that's because the departments have them or whether they're just, there's not enough funding that's a match for them.
That's Representative. That's a good question. I think we've had discussions about the program and how to make the program easier to utilize. And in those discussions, I have gotten the sense that because the reimbursement rate is listed in statute, in terms of interactions departments have with us, they recognize we're following the statutes. When it comes to the announcements, so long as we are pointing to some guidance provided on February 1, 2021, the departments generally interact with us and say they recognize we're following the announcement. I would struggle to characterize how departments are reacting to the reimbursement rate. That's well within their prerogative. And I feel that if I were to characterize them as being just because they interact with us accepting the reimbursement rate or the program as we follow it, they may not convey to us disappointment or frustration with the reimbursement rate, and that would be very much in their prerogative. So I'm sorry for the bit of a convoluted, but I thought about it a lot, and that's kind of how I want to convey that.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you had a sense. We have the money and we want to see them use it is the bottom line.
Correct.
So, okay. And then the 60 million, and this is actually back to Jeff, that $60 million in the nonprofit health and human service organization grants and aid. When we meet to talk about the RFI, can we discuss that 60 million then, or did you have different plans for this $60 million for the nonprofit health and human services grants?
Well, it might be useful to talk about it then, to be fair. I'm not sure we have clear plans yet for that set of bond funds. One thing that we'd like to assess is we're putting out quite a bit of ARPA money, you may be aware, that is making available a lot of capital improvement projects for health and human services facilities of one kind or another. I think we'd like to see how that goes and see where the gaps are, where the unmet needs are. But certainly our conversation with you about that other project is probably a good place to have that conversation as well.
Okay. All right. And then I'm just continuing to look at the unallocated balance listing. The grant and aid for Sandy Hook Memorial, I think that may be a mistake. The $2,600,000 was already allocated.
We agree. That may be a candidate for reprogramming for something else. I'm not sure we're taking the lead on reprogramming that, but we will follow your lead.
We gave them the money, right?
Through Urban Act, I believe through
Urban Act.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we could. It shouldn't be listed as not spent because we spent it, right?
Right. Well, it's on the books as an authorization. So if you want to reprogram it for something else, I commend that to you for your consideration.
Why would we have to do that if we authorized it and you allocated it?
We didn't use that authorization. We used part of Urban Act, which is a generic pot of money.
Right.
So this
wouldn't just transfer.
We can't. It's written into the Bond Act. You'd have to change the language of the Bond Act.
Oh, okay. All right. So we would have to.
Have I got that right, Brian?
That's correct, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have to make that note that as we're writing the bond bill, right, that we can make that change.
Yes, ma'am. They got the money.
Okay. And then going back to our actual bond commission meetings, one of the conversations we had with the secretary when we were crafting the bond bill last year was we had put some different frameworks in around the bonding commission agenda and had asked that some more framework was put around it so that leaders of the bonding committee were more in the loop as to what the priorities were and what we would be spending and allocating the funds on. That did not happen. So we would like to know what your thoughts are on how we can better work together, because we as a legislative body, right, we have our priorities and we vote on a package where we would like to see funds targeted towards, right, some critical areas across our state, but then we don't always see that match up in the allocation. And we want to be better in sync. And that was our attempt last year. And it was committed to us that there would be more synergy. And I know everybody's really busy, but it's our role as the legislative leaders of bonding to be a little bit more in line with what you guys are doing.
I appreciate that. And as you indicated, I just got here. So we have a chance to establish, and I'd like to establish with you and Senator Moore and the other members of the committee, a relationship where you communicate all the time and I'll communicate to you about what your needs and priorities are. I do recall seeing you in our offices last fall prior to our last bond commission meeting. So I know there was input. It may be that we don't always do every item that is asked for. We do calibrate the allocations based on where the state is in terms of its fiscal position and where we are with our debt service. I'm sure all the members of the committee know that as we allocate money, we are adding to the state's bonded indebtedness. And we have on the appropriate side, a debt service line that gets bigger every time we borrow money. So we're trying to keep that line under control because that crowds out money on the appropriation side. And the appropriations people don't want to have their projects crowded out either. But you're quite right. We absolutely can and should be engaged with you early and often about what your priorities are in terms of bonding. And I'd like to do that. We have a bit of a division of labor, and I'm just learning this myself coming into this role new. There's a bit of a division of labor between us and our friends in the governor's office, who also have contacts and discussions with legislators and are coming to understandings with them about what they're going to be seeing in the near term or even longer term in terms of projects. So there's some coordination that we have to do before we settle on a bond agenda. So for me, it's trying to get a handle on where are we all going to talk at the same place and same time, so we know who's getting what when. We need to be clear about that. But I also don't want to overpromise. So I want to open those lines of communication for sure, but I also need to have conversations with my colleagues down the street and you with your colleagues in the other chamber. Senator Moore is here. Each chamber has priorities that are divergent. Sometimes everyone has things they want to do. So it is a complicated process, but I absolutely want to open the lines of communication and be clear with everyone what we can and can't do.
Okay. And I appreciate that. And I know you just got here, and that's why I reiterate these conversations. So you're aware of what our expectations were and where maybe some of our disappointments are so that we can improve that relationship. Our meetings that were in OPM were strictly over Urban Act and economic development projects that were across the state, but we were not in conversations with, for example, we want to see funds in open space. We want to see funds in school security. We want to see funds. Those are the conversations we want to have. And you may, the governor and OPM may have very good reasons why, for some reason, we're not allocating a certain amount. We need to understand that, because what happens is next time it comes around for the bond bill, we're going to look at those funds and we're either going to start to cut those funds because, they're not being used, or, we take other steps. So just 5 minutes of frustration, just had to air it. And
that's fine. One more thing I'd say, if I may, when it comes to agency requests, bond requests that come through agencies, you mentioned open space. DEEP has open space money it likes to spend. School security comes to us through SDE and other. So that is one of OPM's specialties, is we do the agency requested stuff for sure. It's more the I'll say the legislative type requests, the local projects that tends to be something the governor's office is more involved with, but we absolutely are the ones doing the agency requests. So certainly speak to us early and often about agency type requests that you support.
Yeah. Okay. So before I turn it over to, I don't know whose hand was up first. I think Representative Piscopo. Along those lines, just want to emphasize that yes, school security. There's $10 million in unallocated balance in DESP, and DESP said they are ready to do another round of grants, and they have a list, a waiting list. And you know, if we put funding in school security, that means it's important to us. It is important to us. We certainly don't want to wait till there's another tragedy to say we had funds sitting there and we could have helped that school.
Yes, ma'am. I have a son in public schools as well.
Yeah, no, we all care. Yes, we all care about the security of our schools. Okay, Representative Piscopo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Secretary Beckham. I appreciate your testimony and your presentation here today. My first question goes back to the what our House Chair has brought up about the $75 million in matching. It leverages federal funds. This is our state portion of a match
right.
to leverage federal funds.
That's right.
What's the match? What are we looking to leverage with the $75 million?
Brian, do you have a read on what we think this is? I think it varies based on the grant, right? So there's formula grants, competitive grants. It depends on the grant, but do we have a read on how much that leverages?
Yeah. So right now we're still working with state agencies in order to identify what exactly they're going to spend the money on. For DEEP, for instance, there's a combination of formulaic programs. So there's about $30 million dedicated to various clean transportation, energy and grid resilience, clean water, and other community resilience programs that DEEP already runs or will get expanded under the infrastructure program. The competitive side, that's a little bit of an unknown. There's a lot of money available there. We have 20 million right now as an estimate, just based on what DEEP and other agencies have been able to obtain over the history of getting competitive grants. So that one is a little bit more fluid in terms of what is available, what we can actually spend the money on.
I see. So we're not quite sure. We're just going to try and go after the federal money as best we can, and this will give you the leverage to do that.
That's correct. Yep.
I got you. Okay.
One more thing I would add to that. This is just the fiscal 23 installment of what we're going to do for bonding. My guess is as this infrastructure money comes down to us in the next biennium, we're probably going to come back for yet more bond authorizations to access more of that. It's 5 or 6 billion is one of the figures we've heard that may be coming to us over the next several years. So.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, okay. That further answers my question. I appreciate that. And we'll stay posted on that. Who decides on the agencies? I mean, it seems that most of the money's going to DEP and DPH. Is there DAS in there, or some infrastructure improvements, or DOT, or that kind of thing also?
Well, we included this information for this committee because you're the general bonding subcommittee, but certainly on the transportation side, probably the lion's share of the infrastructure coming down is going to be on the transportation side, and DOT has a long-standing process of accessing those federal funds with state matching funds from the Special Transportation Fund.
Thank you. And then the House Chair again brought up the Sandy Hook Memorial. Can't we just if it's been allocated already through a different fund, we just zero that out? Yeah, we just.
You could, yes.
And then grants and aid for regional and local improvements and development, that $35 million, that has any of that been tapped? Any of that $35 million been? I know I've seen we authorized it. None has been allocated in recent bond commission agendas. I see it, according to your paperwork.
That has not been allocated and is available in both, I think 35 million in both fiscal years. It has not been allocated. There are some specific projects enumerated in that authorization, and they're there on page 3 of our attachment A. We have not moved that to my knowledge. Those would still be available to move.
If I could just add, so we haven't allocated any from that $35 million. However, some of the projects listed within that authorization have been funded through Urban Act. We chose as an agency to specifically use Urban Act first, and then if funds were still needed, we have this as a alternative funding source.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Brian. So how about the state money? I see 45 million unallocated. Any plans on any steep allocations that for some of our small towns?
Steep is provided for in the authorizations. We're asking for, well, actually last year we added an additional 15 million for another steep round. So there is available, how much is available now, Brian, for steep? Because there was some previously authorized, I believe.
Yeah, that's the $45 million that's listed. Yep.
Yeah, 45 million is available. Oh, I see it is listed at the top of page 2 of our testimony. 45 million is available. Steep, we know, you asked me about that when I appeared before the Finance Committee a few weeks ago, and we know how important some of those projects have been for small towns, particularly out in your area, and that is available. That is something we are considering for a future bond agenda, but no plans have been finalized as yet.
And thank you again, Secretary Beckham. And just a question to follow up on our House Chair's line of questioning toward the end. Who now with kind of some changes over there at OPM? Who do we go to? Who's in charge of our bond pack? Is there some like hierarchy of? Is there somebody we could go to that's in charge of the bond package that we could talk to? As a thinking member, or as a chairman, or as a chairperson?
Yeah, Governor Lamont sets the bond commission agendas, and we work with him. I am the secretary on the State Bond Commission, and we work with him in advance of our state bond commissions to set the agenda. We work with our colleagues at the governor's office, including his chief of staff, Paul Mounds, who many of you know. And between he and I, and Brian is our main analyst for the bond commission. And so the three of us are heavily involved in that process. And we have other people involved as well. Other people that you've seen today are also involved in their issue areas. But principally, it's chief of staff, myself, and Brian is our principal staff person.
Okay. And thank you for that answer. I appreciate that. And it may be, and I hope it's not untoward.
Nope.
Okay. So I would probably run things through Brian, and then maybe he could talk to you, or I could talk to you after that. Would that be
certainly?
Okay. Thank you very much again, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Piscopo. Brian, you had said that sometimes we use Urban Act grant funding for a project that may be authorized in a different line item. Why do we do that?
I think now this was under the prior secretary, that the decision was we had such a large amount of money under the Urban Act program that we would first tap into that before we moved on to other newer authorizations. As an agency as a whole, we typically, since we have authorizations for multiple different projects that would fall under the kind of the same concept, we typically choose authorizations that are older first before we tap into ones that are newer. For that one, it is a little bit odd because Urban Act is an ongoing authorization. Year to year, we tend to add more money to it. But as a general rule of thumb, that is how OPM operates when we put together a bond commission agenda. And I think it was just a policy within the agency to use Urban Act first before tapping into the other authorization.
So that gets a little messy though. So if we authorize it in an actual bond bill, right? It's in statute because the bill is a statute and it comes out of a different bucket. Isn't that going against the actual statute of the bill that we voted on?
Well, whatever bond agenda gets set, whatever item gets set, it has to be within the definition of the act. So it would have to fall within an eligible expense for whatever pot we're using. So Urban Act is a very broad, it's a big paragraph in the general statutes describing what Urban Act can be used for. And so if it's in that list of items, it's certainly available for use.
Okay. I'm just saying that we authorize it. Sandy Hook Memorial is a perfect example, right? So we put a different authorization in the bond bill, but we took it under Urban Act, and now we have to change the language. So when we don't take it out of the bucket that we designated, right, now we have to move stuff around. I think the less we move stuff around, the less errors we have. It's just
I think your point is well taken. I just, like you say, I just got here. I didn't make those decisions, but I'm happy to consult with you going forward about those kinds of decisions.
Yes, and my comments are not critical. My comments are we're questioning some things that have been steps that have been taken in the past to understand there may be very good reason, right? And just to say this is what we're looking at for the future. And then Brian, one other question to follow up to Representative Piscopo on the clean water. We love clean water. We love it so much that we put an extra $25 million in year 2 of the bond bill for clean water, anticipating we were going to need funds for a federal match. So this funding that you're requesting, is this above and beyond the $25 million that we put in the bill last year? Because we added $25 million already.
I guess I'm confused as to which money are you pointing to? The 25 million.
Clean water. I think we put it in the clean water revolving fund.
Yeah, this is distinct. You're referring to when we were talking about clean water before as the match for infrastructure money. But there are infrastructure projects that will also be for clean water. So it is additive of what you would have done previously on clean water.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, this would be in addition, the expansion under the federal infrastructure program.
Well, so I understand what you're saying about the federal infrastructure funds, but we did put that $25 million in there anticipating that there was going to be some type of fund coming from the federal government, whether it was infrastructure or ARPA, and we knew that we wanted to leverage those funds through a match. So that is exactly why we put the funding in there. So what I'm saying is with that 25 million, do you need what you're requesting? I mean, I love to give money to clean water. I just want to make sure we're using it wisely.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I would say yes. We would still need that money. I talked to my coworkers over at DEEP in order to fund clean water. The infrastructure match would go beyond just what clean water does. So it provides them with other opportunities, not just what is specific within clean water. So there are certain projects that would kind of cross over, but there's additional funds there for newer programs that the clean water program doesn't currently fund.
Okay, great. And DEEP and Commissioner Dykes did go through some of those opportunities through those funds, which were critical. And I think it's important we leverage them. So I just wanted to clarify everybody's on the same page between DEEP, OPM, and us. Okay, with that, Kate, Representative Farrar has been very patient. Thank you.
No, it's all good. Very helpful, Dorinda. Thank you, everyone. I know I jumped on after you started, so apologize if this has been asked, but I've been trying to listen in. I was curious particularly about the unallocated balance, for the transit-oriented development fund. I know in my district and many, with our transit-oriented development zones, we're looking at maximizing, as you noted, kind of a whole range of funding opportunities. And so I wanted to know what your plans were for this unallocated balance.
I know that I'll let Brian fill in some detail or generic detail. I know that we've got some already allocated money that's still making its way through the pipeline. I know this because I signed something the other day that authorized some grants to go out under this. So there's some in the pipeline funding projects now. My assumption is that we would be assessing where those needs are, where those requests are, and seeing if we can fit them into a future agenda, if to the extent that there's need, and surely there is.
So just to clarify, it sounds like there's items that have recently been approved, and you're saying there's other ones that you're anticipating would fall under this unallocated balance, or you're looking for project? Okay, okay. And so you anticipate that that $6 million would be used up with those projects?
I'm not anticipating anything in terms of what we're going to use and when we're going to use it. It's certainly there. It's available for use to the extent that needs are identified and requested. Do you know, Brian, if we have pending requests in that for that program?
I think, you know, the plan still is that we would use the money potentially next year, but Undersecretary Martin Heft would probably have a better idea than I would on this.
Sure. Thank you, and good afternoon, Representative and all. Martin Heft, Undersecretary at OPM. So yeah, these funds have been used as grant rounds on this. The last grant rounds were actually in 2018, which those funds are still being distributed out to some of those grant recipients. The plan is looking at fiscal 23 to do some other grant rounds with this TOD and the responsible growth funds. But there's not a set time as the secretary has mentioned yet for that, you know, for a new grant round, but that is anticipation of what we are looking for.
Okay, so when you're thinking next year, you're saying at some point in 2023, there might be another grant round. Is that accurate?
Correct, obviously pending, you know, the availability of the funding through the bonding.
And can you share how many grants were awarded in 2018?
I can, let me see if I have that here. So the 2018 kind of deviated slightly from previous rounds. Fiscal 18 OPM provided a grant of $3 million in transit-oriented development and pre-development funds, and $2 million from the Responsible Growth Incentive Fund to CHFA, the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, to recapitalize its existing small multifamily loan program. In 2017, the grant round was $15 million, went to about 16 grantees.
So 2017 was, so it sounds like 2018 deviated, you're saying, from
correct
2017. So I guess in planning and looking forward, are you looking at these grants looking more like 2017 or 2018? Do you all have thoughts on that?
The plan would be more similar to, you know, the purpose of the program of the multiple grants, correct?
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And we'll be looking forward to following up on that, as I'm sure I'm not the only one who has TODs who see a lot of potential in them. So thank you, Martin, and thank you to the OPM team, and thank you, Representative Bohr.
Representative Bohr has passed the torch over to me. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Representative Bohr. I just want to reiterate some of the things that my co-chair has said. I've not had an opportunity to have a conversation regarding bonding with anyone at OPM about the process, about the agenda. And I hope that I'm glad that we're all starting at the same place in the beginning of having a great line of communication and everybody getting the same information, that we know what we're doing and how we need to respond to the representatives and the senators that we all represent by sitting as the co-chairs of this. I just think it's important for us to be credible and to have the information that we can communicate clearly to them what's going on and be aware of anything we need to know. So I look forward to that in the future. And then I do have two of the towns that look at STEEP. And I heard you say there might be some plans for STEEP in 2023. Is that correct?
Fiscal 23, probably this fall. Fiscal 23 starts July 1 of this year.
All right. So we're looking forward to that. And I don't see any other hands up for questions. And I know we had scheduled you all for till 3:30, but we don't want to take your time if we don't need it. And if there's anything else you want to share with us, we'd love to hear it. But I think we received most of the answers that we needed. And Representative Dorinda is just right on. Representative Bohr, she's just right on with a lot of the questions. And Representative Piscopo, thank you for your input also, for asking some really great questions. And I'm hoping that this is the beginning of a great relationship with all the new people here and with us. Are there any other questions, or does anybody want to comment?
Hey, Marilyn, Senator Moore, I had one more that I forgot to ask. Is there anything that we received through ARPA funds that has been able to replace what we have here in the bond bill that now we can remove from our authorizations?
Goodness.
Anything we can cut?
Well, anything you can cut is kind of a legislative question, I think, not so much an executive branch question. We would probably entertain a discussion offline about that. It's probably the case that there are some. We'd have to give that a little thought. But I think you'd be disappointing some of your colleagues if you began to deauthorize things that had previously been authorized. But that's I like the way you're thinking. Happy to have that conversation with you.
Well, but just to, as the agency leader, right? The agency who requests funds, right, and is responsible for those funds. If you see those funds have another origin to cover the programs that we are looking for, and together you're looking for, have come, wouldn't it be the agency leader's responsibility to say, you know what, we got ARPA funds for this program. We can maybe not, we don't need these funds in this category. We can maybe use them over here.
Paul's got a response. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Mr. Secretary, I will jump in. Paul Potamianos from OPM. The ARPA funding also requires allocation by the legislature. So we don't have the discretion to just point a project necessarily to that funding stream in the absence of a legislative allocation that could be used for that purpose.
Okay, so I do know that we actually passed that bill to say that we need to authorize what the ARPA funds are used for. So back to the original question, if we're going to pass the bill as to what it's going to be used for, but you're going to be coming up with some of those recommendations, right?
I think you're asking, can you deauthorize some bond authorizations that we're covering via ARPA? Is that your question?
That's the bottom line.
I would like to think about that with my team. I think I like the way you're thinking. That makes some sense to me.
Yeah, it would be responsible if we just want to, I know there's a lot of funding coming into Connecticut, but so that doesn't mean that we need to leave our state of Connecticut funding, right, on the table. We certainly know there's a lot of great need, and we don't want to take away from all of the programs that we're supporting, but we don't want to over authorize, right, and go closer to our debt limit.
I agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Moore, for indulging me to come back in.
Mr. Secretary, did you want to say something?
Just that this has been a good experience for us here today. And I just want to reiterate that if you need anything from us, please don't hesitate to give us a call. We'll try to be helpful at any time.
Thank you so much. And thank you to your team. I see no other questions. So we're going to release you and adjourn this meeting.
Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend.